All right. And we're here. This is the Frank Experience, and I'm here with Bennett Eller. Bennett with two N's, two T's, Eller with two L's. I'm saying that for myself. Anyways, it's great to have you back, man. This is the podcast redo. Uh, the first one was just, man, finding a finding good tools to use for podcasting for both video and audio can be challenging. But I think I found one. StreamYard. It's great.
Yep.
What's going on, buddy? How you doing?
Good, man. How you doing? Thanks for having me back.
It's been great. Um, just had some some news this morning, and it is what it is. But we can chat about that later.
Breaking news.
Breaking news. So I wanted to, we'll get into a lot of like your business, a lot of your video experience and kind of what got you into that. We can talk about that. But I also want to talk about what's going on in the world. We'll get into COVID, catch up on this thing that you said the New York Times wrote an article on, the Great Reset. We'll get into that. Tesla, some conspiracy theories with Richard E. Byrd, Colonel Richard E. Byrd. It's going to be good times, man. So basically, I want to dive into this interesting, like fresh off of reality. I don't know how to say it. But basically, last night I was at a friend's birthday party and we had a conversation with someone. Mm-hmm. And this person was or did work in the U.S. Air Force. And he, for a brief time, worked at Area 51. And this person talked about things that he saw and knew of and heard of. Because when you work on aircraft, there's different areas of maintenance. And sometimes you work on aircraft that previously were top secret. Mm-hmm. So you work with people who have worked on these projects, and the security around those projects are very high.
Very tight.
And he talked about the bone scanners with the hand stuff that Bob Lazar talked about. Mm-hmm. And so he thought Bob Lazar was a fluke or a spook or whatever. Like he just thought he was, not entirely truthful, but he's done like reports and stuff on him when he was in high school. So he knew of him. He didn't think much of him until he saw and heard the podcast. Because it's crazy what podcasts will do when you have a long form conversation.
Yeah, you get to the truths.
Exactly. Or you just have an opportunity to sit down and talk more. By the way, we're drinking. We told it in the first podcast. We were like, hey, man, we got to have a beer next time. So there you go. Is that hazelnut? What is that?
Rogue hazelnut brown nectar.
Oh, nice, man. I got Modelo.
Pretty good. We're fancy. So. Doesn't really taste that hazelnutty, but it's good.
Whatever works, man. It's probably just a hint of flavor. You know what I mean?
Yep. A little malty, a little toffee, a little nutty.
I recently, on a side note, just got into better coffee. I got a coffee grinder. So nice. I got coffee beans, and I grind them. I do 4.5 tablespoons. I grind them. I do coarse because I had to get a grinder that had different levels of
Burr grinder.
Grinding, and then I put it into it's a camping French press.
Yep.
But essentially, and then I boil my water. I use an electric kettle, so I can control the temperature. So I cook it to 200 temp. Dude, it's great. I cool it down with a little bit of ice, and then I put my sugar in there. And I think I've gotten to like the best formula, in my opinion. I've been looking for it for coffee, and I'm excited because I'm hoping I can continue using this formula, but just change the flavors of coffee to figure out what is the best. And right now I have a hazelnut, just generic private brand, and it tastes pretty good.
Nice. Yeah. So I do something similar with I use the Chemex system though.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. That's good. The problem with the Chemex though is like it's hard to have anything nice because eventually it breaks.
Those things are strong, man. I've taken that in multiple camping trips.
It's probably the actual Chemex.
I have an actual
off-brand.
I broke down and bought like 2 years ago. I bought the real one. It's like $40, something like that.
Yeah.
I bought the real one, and I throw that in my truck all the time. We go camping and other things, and it's hold up. I'm surprised.
Glass? Is it like tempered glass? Like what is it?
It's tempered glass. Like a beaker, but it holds up. It's strong. But
nice. I'm always worried I break it.
I know, so am I. But so is life.
Yeah, pretty much. Trying to remember where I was before the coffee.
Yeah, I got into coffee because I talked about beer, and before that you were talking about just kind of what we're talking about today.
Gotcha. Area 51 stuff. So how it came about, we're talking about, the bone scanners and stuff like that. So anyways, so Bob Lazar, and they were talking about the bone scanners and how, he was saying, I got to try to remember, when I go off on a tangent, I'm like, okay, so here is what I had. I got to start writing that shit down.
Yeah. Throw up a note on your computer and then type in as you go through topic.
That's what I'm going to do.
I think I'm going to do that too, actually.
Got to get better at that. Yeah. Just try to remember. Because what I'll do is, for example, because what I used to do, I used to interrupt, and I'm not saying I don't do that still, but I used to do it worse.
Oh, yeah.
But one of the reasons why that is, for me personally, is because of, forgetting. If I have something in my head, I'll forget if I don't say it. So I try to repeat, a couple of words from the thought so I can remember it when the person's done or there's a pause.
I'll do the same. I'll try to write down some stuff as we go along, too, so I remember.
Nice.
All right, so new topic. What are we talking about now?
Well, we're getting back into the
Area 51.
Continuing the bone scanners. And so, when he did research, he found that the bone scanners are actually at an Air Force museum.
Oh, yeah.
So they were trying to discredit Bob Lazar, but the reality was bone scanners are real. And then he even was able to get more evidence on that because he was talking to people who previously worked on top secret aircraft projects. And they were like, yeah, man, we had to use the bone scanners too. And so there's validity there. Yeah. In addition, there was articles for Bob Lazar in the area where he worked, even though they tried to say he didn't, but they had an employee roster and he was on it. They have evidence of that. But, he talked about how while being there, they would, I think that's what it was. We tangented from the beer to the coffee, damn it. But so he talked about the sound. First off, it was when he was working there would be stuff where if something went down, they would shut everything down. Everybody close the hangars, close the windows. If you're in a vehicle, get in it or, get it, shut the door and don't look at anything. They had snipers looking at everything. It was so tied down that if you opened your window a little bit, there would literally be somebody on the radio screaming, person in vehicle, blah, 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 roll up your window. It was that serious. And he remembers hearing that sound of bubble wrap crackling sound. And it's just stuff like that, man. It's really crazy how if they have those procedures in place, what would that be for and why? Because even though, in addition, when aircraft, even military aircraft, when they fly around Area 51, if they have camera equipment, they can't point it towards Area 51 at all. Mm-hmm. And somehow they have some weird way to find out if they did or not. It's really weird.
Does it kind of fascinate you that if they do have all these procedures and scenarios laid out for this kind of stuff, why has the pandemic been so crazy? You know what I mean? It's just a chaotic mess. So I guess we'll talk about later on. We can talk about two separate branches of government, right?
Right.
Yeah.
It's super crazy, man. It's nuts. Well, the thing that bothers me about COVID is how Black Friday shopping is totally fine. You can go grocery shopping, that's totally fine, but they will continuously talk about how, you can't do A, B, C, or D. Mm-hmm. And then you have politicians who just decide they want to do whatever they want, but they want to preach and bitch and moan about, how people aren't doing this or this person isn't doing that. But then, they're supposed to be closing salons down and, Nancy Pelosi can go get her hair done and she's not even wearing her mask.
Yep. And then her nephew, Gavin Newsom, who's my governor, tells people he can't go to restaurants and then has his restaurant whole debacle thing he got caught for.
Yeah, and he had a whole group of 20 people or some shit like that.
Yep. In a closed off space.
It's really annoying because
they're related. That's super annoying.
What needs to happen though is there needs to be, and I think there's a conflict of interest too, right?
Oh yeah.
What I
Oh
think
yeah.
there needs to be, though, what needs to happen, truthfully, is there needs to be protests for these people thinking that they have the power to do these things, but they're just like us, man. They're citizens too.
Yeah, it's just totally that part is the humanizing, understandable part. But hey, if you can't follow your own rules, don't expect us to.
I agree, and that's
Yeah.
why that's where I personally think we should be protesting is like to these politicians, man. They need to like follow the same rules. In addition, there needs to, in my opinion, there needs to be protests in regards to how politicians can write legislation and they write themselves out of it.
Yeah, I mean that's a big issue. I think in the U.S. too. Like we just kind of accept a lot of that. Like have you been following a lot of the protests in the other countries right now?
All I remember hearing about is how Chile overthrew, or rather, they all uprose in a point to where they're redoing their whole constitution.
Yeah, there's that, and then there's France has a huge one right now. France has a huge protest going on right now, and it's
Yeah,
regarding the lockdown and a lot of the legislation that's been written and the
yeah.
plans of how they're going to further lock things down, based off of what their government is telling them. And kind of impressed about how all of the other countries have been reacting to the lockdowns and coronavirus, but our country's been very, very, very different, which makes you wonder how strong our media is here in crafting the stories they want to craft.
Right. Well, the
Yeah.
thing that I've noticed too is how strongly united other countries can be together in single causes, and how I wish that would be more of the case here in the States because there's so much division, and it is primarily because of the media. So we
Hmm.
really should be protesting, politicians and media, like corrupt
Yeah.
politicians and the media, and demanding there to be laws where companies and media and politicians aren't controlling the country because
I
I
mean,
think that's what's
yeah,
going on.
yeah. I think there's a select group of woke, I guess you could say, people who do see that and see that being the bigger issue here. But there's, the younger generations maybe, and the people who are just happy, doing whatever the news tells them to believe in. It just, if anything, it shows how powerful our news media is in the USA and how they've been so impactful on the current division in our world. Right? They focus so much on having us be distracted with all these other things, so we aren't coming together as a unified, you know, basis and trying to fight some of these things that are unjust. They're
I
trying
would,
to divide
yeah,
people. Yeah.
I would agree with that, and I think also what I've noticed is, um, in addition to the division, uh, how difficult it is to have conversations with people
Oh yeah.
because of the built frustration and anger and inability to discuss. Like I can have an open-minded discussion with somebody who 100% disagrees with me,
Yeah.
as long as we can both kind of come together on a base foundation and agree on something. I
Yeah.
think that's the biggest thing. We have to find, okay, where can we agree on one thing and one thing only? Let's move from there, right? Like for example, abortion.
Yeah.
We can agree and disagree. We could I am for abortion, you're against abortion, for example. But at the base thing that we can agree on is you want to have the freedom to do what you want. I want to have the freedom to do what I want. So how do we come together and propose suggested legislation? If we're going to write to our congressmen, to our representatives, and say this is what we propose as legislation, well, I think the best thing at that point is first off legislation for abortion to be at the decision of the parents, right? And there's
Mm-hmm.
more that we can dive into that. And here's why I say abortion should be the decision of the parents is because if I'm against abortion, here's the one thing that I think we need to get to the same point on is if I'm against abortion, and I think I know I gave you the against part, but the point is if I'm against it, I'm against it for myself, but I think if we talk about the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, we have the freedom to do a lot of things.
Yeah.
So why am I going to restrict your freedom to do what you wish?
Yeah.
I may believe that human life matters,
Yeah.
and we can agree on that point, but we also have to find a point where it's like, okay, but here's the question. even if you make abortion illegal, you're forcing somebody to do something they don't want to do, but then you go back to the whole, well, you consummated that.
Yeah.
Okay, I respect that. But at the same time, there's also the option of adoption.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different ways you can go, but the reality also we get back to is why would you care what somebody else does in their life? How does that affect you? How does it affect your ability to pay your bills? How does it affect your ability to take care of your children? That's kind of where I focus, at least in our household, how our beliefs affect our voting. Yeah. Like, if it affects the way we get money, if it affects the small businesses that we want to build, and it affects our ability to make decent money without taxing being so horrendous to the point to where we can't make money, so building a business is kind of pointless. Like, so those are the things that affect, us, like marriage and like, all those things that surround just everything within our household.
You vote for the individual.
Correct.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Yeah.
Is that what it's considered, voting for the individual?
Yeah, I mean, I think the advertised democratic approach is to vote for the shared welfare of everyone, right, and all that kind of stuff. But as we know, that's never proven to be good in a lot of situations where you just hand out everything to everybody. But yeah, voting for the individual, focusing on what's important to, what's going to affect your life and stuff is how most people should vote. But unfortunately, some people vote with the false hope they're going to help everyone else. But given history, it's never been that way. Politicians will come and say they will, but they never do.
True. And here's the thing, too, is I know, like, freedom is a tough thing because with freedom, it broods places where people are going to believe or not believe the same things. And if they don't believe the same things, then, I think at that point it can be divisive because there's no like middle ground or foundational beliefs that you can agree on. Like, it's like a Muslim and a Christian. I think the fundamental thing they can agree on is they both believe in freedom of religion.
Yeah.
They may disagree.
Well, right? They believe in freedom of their religion.
Well, no, the freedom of religion as the right for you to practice the religion you believe.
Yes, of course. Yes.
Like if you're the Muslim or I'm the Muslim and you're the Christian, whichever, we can both agree, hey, we love the idea and the freedom of us being able to practice the religion that we believe in.
Yeah.
And that is a base foundational belief that we can both agree on. So let's move from there.
Yeah.
And I want to continue to fight for that. I want to fight for, and it's so beautiful when you'll see Muslims or Christians or whatever band together. I remember hearing stories or seeing news articles or videos about how, different religions would band together, hold hands and protect a church or protect a mosque or something like that. And that stuff is beautiful, man.
Yeah. Don't see a lot of that nowadays.
No, not really.
It's too much division right now.
So the Bob Lazar stuff just continues to kind of throw me off a bit because there's so many things that go into that. Like, he talked about seeing crafts. He talked about
scanners.
Like the scanners. He talked about like how they're powered.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where, he was talking about Element 115 back in the 80s. And, here in the 2000s, there was an experiment done and they were actually able to create some. Not a whole lot, but they were able to create
was it Super Collider, right?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, they did in that. Yep.
Yep.
30 years ago, he discovered it and talked about it and announced it, and then he's crazy. He's conspiracy theorist. Blah 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 blah.
Exactly.
I mean, hasn't that always? It almost seems like 30 years is always the jump from things not being conspiracy to being they did that. Like, that's the same thing happened Operation Mockingbird. The same thing that happened with MK Ultra. Like 30 years later, the documents got somewhat released and that kind of thing from the agency that was doing it.
Yeah, I mean, because isn't it like 20 years that is how long it's classified, and then that classification goes away, and then it's usually like 5 to 10 years before it's like mainstream knowledge or something like that?
Yeah. I mean, they slowly release things over the public. And other than the UFO thing, which has been almost 100-year like slow release of things, 70 years, whatever it has been. Crazy amount of time. We're still not getting full answers, but we're getting small leaks here and there with the Pentagon stuff we had this year, and some of the
Oh my
footage.
God, that vehicle from another world. I'm so
Yeah.
surprised how that's not like world news.
Well,
Can
and
we
like
dive into that?
and 30 days before that, it was this is the UFO confirms UFO. I mean, the Pentagon confirms UFOs, right? It's the Tic Tac video and all that from.
Right.
They confirmed all that. Okay, like we already knew that. Thanks, that's been leaked for a couple of years now. But okay, we'll take it. 30 days later, they say the Pentagon there's the guarantee of ships, or not ships, unknown vehicles, proving it is a vessel of travel, right?
Right.
So it's like, and they're supposed to do new updates every 30 to 90 days. They promised during this whole information release. So I think we're getting a new one soon, another drop.
So that's interesting you bring that up, because in a lot of the conspiracy stuff, at least when it comes to like, I wanted to talk about like the show Cosmic Disclosure. Have you been able to check that out?
Is that in the Gaia?
Yeah.
I have not checked it out yet, but I do have it on my list of things to watch.
Yeah, like it's just crazy because they're talking to a lot of different people. That along with like David Wilcock and his YouTube channel. I know a lot of people have their opinions on the guy, and that's fine, but it's still things to consider, like when you absorb the content.
Yeah,
because,
I mean, like you said, I think people have their opinions on the guys, but there's those guys, whether you like it or not, because they do go on their tangents of craziness. Let's be honest.
Who doesn't?
There's a lot of facts in that. Like, I think a good example of that, which everyone writes him off, is Alex Jones. Everybody writes off Alex Jones. But the podcast he just did with Joe Rogan, that dude fact checked him the entire time, and 95% of that stuff that Alex spewed out, I'm like, Joe, you gotta believe me. The stuff
you gotta believe me, Joe. It's just real. Come on.
It was so good. That podcast I'm having crying laughing. A lot of that stuff was fact checked to be true.
Yeah, a lot of what Alex Jones has actually brought up later on was brought to be the case, and that's what frustrates me is like, it's the same perspective they have when it comes to like any type of UFO crash or story. I remember hearing stories where it's like, oh yeah, there's like all these Apache helicopters and, all these vehicles came into town. And then they were talking about this guy, and it was a story about this blue streak of light, and there was this crash into a river. And like, apparently, like not even like an hour later or less than that, there was like vehicles coming out of nowhere, Apache helicopters, the whole 9 yards.
That just happened in Brazil, by the way, that same exact event.
And there was a guy driving a boat. It was like a houseboat.
Mm-hmm.
And like normally he would come into town or something like that. I can't remember the exact details, but the point is they never saw him again.
Yeah.
Because he saw everything. And, men in black suits, the whole 9 yards. And it doesn't matter whether people think something's true or not. When questions arise about these things happening, that's where I go, but why though? Like, why is there Apache helicopters? Why is there a bunch of black vehicles and dudes in black suits and stuff and blah, blah, blah?
Yeah.
And why are people like disappearing? And I get it. They have control, and which is why, there's CIA and a lot of the media companies, even entertainment companies as well. They're trying to keep tabs on a lot of the content that's going out there. Sure. Yeah. I mean, I have a sort of a somewhat belief that they're slowly trying to build us up to a point where we're being programmed, if you will, to be prepared. Because I mean, you see a lot of stuff coming out in these science fiction movies, or so called, and you see a lot of different technologies like consciousness. There's a lot of movies out there now that are about like switching bodies with consciousness, time traveling with consciousness. The Disney movie with John something or other, where his consciousness goes to a different body on Mars.
Oh, are you talking about the new movie coming out called Soul?
No, what's Soul, dude?
The new Disney Pixar movie about how when you lose your soul, you go to the great before.
What?
Dude, that there's a new movie coming out by Pixar Disney called Before. It's about
You said Before?
Oh, sorry, it's called Soul. It's called Soul. It's about like a black man who is living his life and he dies, but then he's going to go to reincarnation. So he goes back to the place called the Great Before. And the great before is where all these souls kind of hang out before they go to their bodies. And so it talks about the correlation between what the souls can feel and what the bodies feel. So like the souls will be down on earth, and the guy who just died is like, oh, I love pizza. He's a soul, right? He's like, oh, I love pizza.
Yeah.
He eats pizza. He takes a bite of the pizza, and he's like, oh, how come I don't taste it? It's like, taste is what your body does. Your soul doesn't taste. It goes into like these weird dimensions of spirit and how you are of consciousness. And dude, that movie, yeah, that's
Is there a trailer?
Yeah, there is. You can check it out.
What's it called? Soul?
Soul. Yeah. Soul. I just saw it the other day and I was like, are you kidding me? There's multiple movies on this subject. Like there's a movie that just came out that I tried to watch, but I fell asleep. I just couldn't get into it. I think it was watching it late at night.
Yeah.
It's got John Krasinski and I forget who else is in it. It's called The Discovery. It's about what happens to you when you die.
Yeah.
So it's your next conscious level, but it's called The Discovery, where like a scientist discovers he's able to like put himself into a death state for a few minutes and discovers what happens during that time. That just came out too. So there's a bunch of movies going on right now that's talking about the level in between death and before birth. Like it's kind of interesting that we're seeing a trend of these videos right now.
I'm just checking out a little bit of the trailer, dude. So first off, I've had this belief that reincarnation is and has always been a thing. What can be frustrating though is the Christian religion. And I don't know if we talked about this before, but I mean, I've stepped away from churches. I've stepped away from Christian as a religion.
Yeah.
And one of the main reasons, like, I believe there's something out there, but I think, and I'm not saying I don't believe Jesus didn't happen.
Yeah.
Because even he said there was a lot that wasn't written.
Yeah.
And then there's also challenges about the Bible and like how it was written and just a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
And the struggle that I have with that is there's translation issues, there's human error in addition to 14 books of the Bible being taken out and nobody can actually answer why.
Yeah.
Or there's no documentation or any type of archival anything that expresses why they took 14 books out of the Bible. The other big thing too is the book of Enoch talks a lot about alien life, talks a lot about origins. They got a lot of stuff from like what Genesis was made from, got a lot of that from the book of Enoch. And so, but the reincarnation stuff, I mean, energy can't be created nor destroyed.
Yeah, so where does it go?
Exactly.
Yeah, energy's fascinating.
Well, it makes a lot of sense. Think about it. You ever heard of David Adair?
Yeah.
I have a DVD. I'll have to look and see if I can find it. But even if not, I'm pretty sure it's online somewhere. I hope the guy's still alive. But basically, the synopsis of the entire movie is the interview with this guy who tells the story of how when he was younger, when he was 12, he created and designed, he got these things. And there's always stories, these weird stories.
Yeah.
Of people getting information or like really, really smart overnight from a dream or from, something like that. And my opinion is I think they got it telepathically, but they want to call it a dream.
Yeah.
He ended up building rockets and then it got out that he was a super smart kid. Like he was like his math was like,
oh, he was a kid.
Woo!
Yeah. I just listened to a podcast about this on Mysterious Universe.
About David Adair?
Yeah, he was the kid, right? Who was like 6.
Yeah.
He was like giving out
super smart. Like I don't know if he's 6. I think he was like 12. But anyways, he was a super young kid. Age doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And then it got out because his mom worked as a nurse, and the Department of the State Department. It was the Secretary of Defense at the time.
Mm-hmm.
His family member, I think it was his mom or like, I don't know, something or other, was at the hospital. And so David Adair's mom was a nurse at the hospital. So David Adair would be at the hospital. And then it kind of got to the Secretary of Defense that how smart this fucking kid is.
Mm-hmm.
And so they had his math checked by the think tanks. And they're like, this is fucking crazy. This kid's smart as fuck.
Yeah.
So long story short, he ends up building a rocket that you have never seen before. You will never hear of, probably never till down the road, maybe never. But the reality is this thing was they had to redesign the entire rocket from the ground up. Every snip, every rivet, every sheet of metal, everything. Because the way this thing was designed was essentially to be an entirely huge magnetic field that was built and produced, like multiple magnetic fields, but the main focus was to control a nuclear explosion.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's nuclear fission or whatever the case, but normally that stuff is contained. Yeah. They didn't contain it. They shot that shit down.
Yeah.
So imagine the rocket, literally a nuclear explosion coming out the asshole of a rocket, and the way that it's designed, and that thing just shot up within 3 seconds. It was in either space, low Earth orbit, or whatever.
Yeah.
But then it ended up landing over there in Nevada, Area 51, because I think originally they had it at the White Sands
Resort
missile range.
Missile range, yeah.
Yeah, and then it landed over in Area 51 in one of the areas over there. Mm-hmm. And David Adair legit blew the shit up because they didn't want people to have it.
Oh yeah.
Because when they found they were going to use it nefariously, he was like, "Oh fuck that!" And he went to retrieve the rocket, and he ended up like setting it to explode, and it's crazy. But he saw, so he saw Victor von Braun.
Yeah.
And they took him down below and he described the way everything worked. Like, you go in this hangar, and the entire hangar floor is an elevator. Goes down to an even larger, like, it's like undescribable how large this big, huge underground hangar was. Like football fields, like 10 of them.
Yeah, I believe it. I mean, I've heard people talk about some of the stuff that happened remember the first Avengers movie, how they had the flying hangars and the submerging hangars and stuff?
Yeah.
I've heard certain people in military divisions talk about some of that stuff's not so far-fetched. About the large capacity hangars being able to be hidden easily through different outlets.
Yeah, like through stealth technology or whatever.
Yep. Yeah, and then you're talking about in that giant bunker, there's a whole elevation that takes the hangar down, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy.
Well, I mean, Stargate, right? We talked about that show before, I think.
Yeah.
And they had built a lot of the the bigger ships that they started using, and that entire project, the same deal. It was an underground, and in like an underground hangar, and they had to work on this ship there too. I mean, just think about the movie 2012.
Yeah.
And those ships and how they had those in a mountain hangar or whatever. Just picture those big hangars, but underground.
Yep.
Just like in the Avengers movie. I mean, it's the exact same shit.
Yeah.
And
most of the stuff isn't as far-fetched as people think it is.
No, it's not. Yeah. I mean, they were doing think tanks about this shit in the 1940s. William Tompkins. Do you know that guy?
Yep. We talked about a little bit last time.
I have that guy's book right here. Selected by Extraterrestrials.
Nice. Yeah,
William Tompkins. Yeah, dude, this guy thought up like spacecraft that come from Halo, dude. Like, just think of the game Halo and the type of things that look like huge ass submersible vehicles, but they're able to fly. It's the same thing. It's anti-gravity aircraft. That's what they did. They basically took anti-gravity, propulsion, and they put it in a submarine. And the reason why, when you look at a lot of stuff that's going on with these UFOs that is related to the Navy is simply because the Navy has a lot of people that are trained to be in a tube for a very long time.
Yeah.
So even if they have no windows, they don't have to know, like, that they're actually in space.
Yeah.
But they very well, could be because, I mean, it's pressurized. I don't know to the extent of how much modifications they would need to do, but yeah, it's crazy. Like, my mind's going into all these different directions about all these stuff. I feel like Alex Jones right now, but like all these different
the
things.
The water and the frogs. Oh, the frogs are gay. Oh, yeah. That's like, oh, that they always go that way.
It's extra dimensional aliens.
Joe, I'm gonna talk like this for the rest of the podcast.
I'm telling you, it's about these extra dimensional. Okay, not extra dimensional. Just extra.
Joe, why are you being so mean to me today, Joe? Why are you being so mean to me?
It's so funny because he's like, I'm not, man. I'm not. It's so funny when he thinks that Joe's like fucking with him.
Yeah.
And Joe's like, I swear to God, I'm not. I swear. He's like,
well, Alex been drinking the whole podcast. You know, Joe's like was doing the straight November. You know, so like that's it is what it is. You know.
Yeah, but no, that stuff's funny. But no, it's crazy because and by the way, Cosmic Disclosure, they actually had William Tompkins on the show.
Oh, nice.
Before he passed away. Yeah, dude.
Check that out.
It's so.
I've seen some of that stuff on that channel. I just haven't gone down the deep end on that.
So let me see if I can find some because there's some crazy I don't know if they're photos. There might be some photos in here. They talk about the periodic table. Where is it? Just like looking because they have photos in here. That's the horizon. What's this one? Not that one. Okay. But there's also like a photo of because he was in the room, by the way, on the moon landing. Well, okay, let's actually real quick.
Where do you want to go with that?
Real quick and easy, okay? Both things happened. Number one, we landed on the moon. Okay, there's evidence of that. Number two, the CIA commissioned a movie production of the moon landing, and here's why. Because they didn't want to crash the fucking economy. Like, they didn't want to piss anybody off. Like, how fucked up is that if you go, well, sorry, we didn't make it.
Yeah.
You know, so it was more of like a show of face, like, yeah, we made it, woohoo! It was sort of like if
everything
we fail,
everything the U.S. was shown, all the citizens were shown was fake.
Yeah. Oh, it was?
Is that what you're saying?
No. I'm saying like if we didn't make it on the moon, they would have shown the fake shit.
Do you think they did?
I don't know. I'm just saying I know, and I believe. Well, let me rephrase. I believe that both happened. I believe that we did land on the moon, but I also believe that the CIA kind of commissioned a production of the moon landing. I think both things happened.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense.
What makes you believe we went to the moon and that footage is real?
Huh. It's a good question. I think it has a lot to do with...
More importantly, why do you think they threw out all the evidence and possibilities of how to go back?
What do you mean?
NASA. They said, oh, unfortunately, we lost all of the... What was it? We lost all of the information and research of when we did those journeys and how we got there. That's why they've taken so long to go back.
I think it had a lot to do with we actually landed, but it's what happened on Trinity Lake.
Okay. What do you think?
And what Buzz Aldrin, I believe, is the one who actually did the moonwalk, saw a whole bunch of aircraft. And he has a drawing of this because William Tompkins was in the room seeing the live feed. Because they had different feeds, just like they had different channels. Like when they saw something weird, they went to the medical channel to talk about it.
Yeah.
And same thing when you hear the feeds cut off at NASA. They'll go to a different channel because they live stream all that shit.
Yeah.
They'll go to a different channel to talk about the real weird shit. And there's the thing too. There's also a lot of stuff that actually made it through. Like there's people that were astronauts and they were talking about how there's like something there, like whether it was the space shuttle and they were doing some satellite work. I remember hearing stories or videos about how when they had the space shuttle out and they were like bringing out a satellite, how another spacecraft had approached the vehicle and another humanoid came out and he was in a spacesuit, but he's a lot taller.
Yeah.
There's astronauts.
Was he blonde hair, blue eyes?
I don't remember that. I think he was brunette actually. He had curly hair or something like that.
No. Yeah, I'm sure you've gone down the Palladians and on you.
Oh, yeah. Well, we talked about the direct energy weapons and how, that's some weird shit going on in California and there's the beams of light that have been, photographed and all that shit. You can call it Photoshop, whatever you want. But look at the photographs of the impacted areas. The houses are to the ground, just ash, but the trees in the front yard aren't burnt down. What the fuck is that?
Yeah. And then, did you ever check out the channel Dutch Sense, and did you see some of his findings with the dew technology?
The earthquake guy?
Yeah.
No, I haven't seen those.
Okay, so if you go back to his channel, he was documenting a lot of the earthquakes around that time. He does it all the time. He's always gone, has maps up,
Right.
solar satellites and all those kind of things. But he caught some of the infrared energy being placed from one place to another on his radars. So you can see that.
How?
He's looking at infrared radars, so he can see beams. And you can see it directly on his radar. He's like, this is during
shit! So that's evidence right there.
It was during a live stream, so he wasn't planning to release a video. This is a video where he was live streaming and he was showing the earthquakes and the fires. He was following the fires very heavily, and then he switched over to another map, and then he realized there was a red laser, like a laser going from one point of contact to a different point of contact in California.
Yeah.
And his first thought was, "This is direct energy weapons. Like this is the proof we've been looking for." And then he caught them again doing it. He caught them again doing it weeks later.
It has to be secret projects because that shit is not allowed. I thought there was a treaty for weapons in space. You know what I mean?
Yeah, who knows though? We were told what is actually going down is two different things. It's not zooming in. There you go. The Sea of Tranquility. Oh yeah.
See all those ships?
Yeah.
That's what he saw in the mission control room. The actual live feed. Or rather, I don't know if I take that back. I don't think he actually saw this. I think this is what was described.
Yeah, I mean,
on the medical channel.
And
they basically told him, you can collect your samples or whatever, but get the fuck out. That's essentially what the alien said.
Yeah, no, I think
Yeah, they said extraterrestrials put up their no trespassing signs, but allowed us to make several other additional Apollo landings to pick up a few rocks and play in the sand. That's what he says.
Yeah, I don't know. My current belief on that whole situation is.
Oh no, it is. I'm sorry, I'm in an inner tube. Armstrong did pan his camera 360 degrees, and that's how he saw the entire crater. That's how they actually saw the aircraft or the spacecraft.
Yeah.
That's nuts, man. You were saying?
Yeah, I've gone back and forth on the moon landing, conspiracies for such a long time because they didn't go, everything was faked. It was because they were trying to, show we're more technologically advanced to the Russians during the Cold War, right? There's that whole angle. There's the angle of we did go, and what we found were things that we were not supposed to find and things that would surprised a lot of us, and that's when we started changing our agendas for a lot of things. Alien, that kind of thing, spaceships, buildings, things of interest that shouldn't have been there. And there's the angle of we didn't see any real footage. All the footage we saw was the cubic documented stuff. All the actual movies that were made. And that's
all the production.
Yeah, well, and some of that stuff
actually makes a lot of sense though.
Yeah,
when you talk about it, because they have to show us the production.
Yeah, you have to see that we made it. If you said we went there, you have to show us it, and that's why. It's hard to believe. It's really hard to believe in that time frame that all of that was able to be shown all across the nation, live streamed.
Well, and that's I agree.
That's why I have issues because we're struggling with this 720p streaming between each other.
Well, and I can speak to that technologically, and I think you might understand where I'm coming from on this. Because there is technology that allows for focused, very, very. Because when audio mixers are inserted into a video production or streaming environment versus just all digital computerized, what you're doing is you're separating the processing of the audio, which is why I want to get the Tascam Model 12 because there's a lot of filters and effects built in to
dynamic processing.
The actual. Yeah, there's a lot of that stuff built into the board, and it's processing all that on the board and takes off the load from the actual CPU. Right? If you have a live filter, like there's applications that can run audio live filters, all that, but then you're putting all the load on that one machine. And so when I designed the streaming setup for the church that I was helping out with media back in Dallas, Lifegate Church International, it was going to cost about $2,000 or $3,000. Mm-hmm. But in reality, in terms of media production, that's pennies in the bucket, man. That's nothing. Yeah. Because there's equipment that costs like $15,000, $20,000, $100,000. Like it can get expensive. But This allowed them to have a hardware encoder, so it would not be on the computer. Nothing would be on the computer. All you're running on the computer is the software, the video switcher. But even then, actually, I take that back. I also put into the budget for that when I was designing it that there's an HDMI switcher. So that was about $1,000. The encoder was about $1,000, and then you had the switcher, you had the encoder, and then you had all the stuff that would bring everything in, and roughly together is about $3,000. Mm-hmm. In addition to having an audio mixer and stuff like that as well.
Yeah.
So, to your point, I think consumers may struggle, but that kind of illuminates like the difference between consumers and like professionals, and then consumers and professionals, and then the shit we don't even know about.
Do you think 50 years ago they had better technology than is available to you and I today?
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I do understand.
No, I get where I understand.
Back in the day, they built a lot of shit that was primarily focused on the job it needed to do.
Yeah, but it was huge.
So in that sense, it's
huge
for sure.
Yeah.
You ever hear one of the funniest things that happened before a launch was, and it was funny how a woman found this. I'm not laughing at the woman. That's not the point I'm getting at. I'm saying it's funny that when they talk about the greats of the greats. Mm-hmm. Well, she's actually the greatest of the greats because they could not launch. And the biggest problem they found was that Ethernet cable wasn't plugged in.
yeah, I believe it.
And so it was.
That's the easy problems that people often overlook, because why would we make that mistake?
Right. But no, I mean, so in that sense, though, but I can understand when you talk about it a little bit more, how it would make sense to show us the fake production versus the real stuff, because it would be really difficult to do a lot of stuff on the fly.
Yeah.
So that part does make sense. There's a huge struggle with a live production.
Oh yeah.
Versus a planned, you know what I mean?
There was live streaming of the events. There was live phone calls directly with the White House. It was like with no lag. There was no lag on the camera that panned up to the rocket going.
Really fucking good points. Holy shit, I didn't think about the lag. You make a lot of good points with that. Yeah, we all know that.
There's no delay and no lag on a lot of that things, and that's the part that I have a hard time believing. Because it was just perfect, right? It was the perfect feed of these astronauts doing their thing, the perfect feed of the president on the phone with them, the perfect feed of them leaving the moon, and the camera pans up at the same time.
Wait.
Wait. You've never seen that footage?
No.
The footage. Look up the footage of them leaving the moon when they left, after they did all the discoveries and did their walk and all that. The final thing.
What's it called?
Footage of astronauts leaving the moon during the first landing, Operation Apollo 11, right?
Apollo 11 or Apollo 17?
What was the one? What was the main one? Apollo 11, right? Apollo 11.
Lift off from the moon.
Lift off from moon. Yeah.
Oh, this is it. This is Apollo 17, where they're launching off from the moon.
Yeah, Apollo 17. That's the one. You're right.
It's super important. Oh, you're watching it too? I pulled up that same video. Here, hold on. I'm actually going to share my screen. So
do that. That's good. I have it up too. We can talk about it.
Let me see.
Blast off. It zooms out, blasts up, and pans in real time.
Show again. Application window.
There happens to be a few little
Chrome
glitches
tab.
on that.
I'm just going to share the Chrome tab.
I don't believe it. It's too perfect.
All right, so we can see this, and I'm sharing it, which is kind of cool. It's cool how and here's the thing: what's cool about StreamYard? I know I'm talking about it, but
no, I want to know, because I'm looking for my perfect platform.
I'm able to do a lot of different things, buddy. I can do the banner, so I was doing the ticker about subscribe, notification bell. If y'all haven't already, you know what to do. Like the video, subscribe, of course. Don't forget to do that. But there's a ticker at the bottom, so I can build that stuff beforehand. And then in addition to the branding and stuff like that, like I can do a countdown. So if you're going to do a live stream, which you can also do with this program, it's only $25 a month. I'm a seller. Sorry, I used to sell for a living.
Gotta put the ad in the video to get the money, right?
There you go. You know what I mean? StreamYard, the best place to be. I was kidding.
Hey, it's brought to you by the mother effing Cash App. That's my favorite part. All the Joe Rogan ones.
Yeah, this guy's hilarious. And then you can do overlays too.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of ways that you can do that in addition to the theme. So I was not a fan of how big the nameplates were.
Yeah.
And so I went in, I'm just looking around as we started the podcast right before in the pre-show, and I found the settings for the theme, and it's a very interesting program. But anyways, to get back to
Moon landing.
the moon landing.
Actually, the moon leaving.
The moon leaving. So, yeah,
watch
man.
That.
So
watch it real quick. Go ahead and watch it. Yeah.
They're zooming out and panning up.
In real time.
Wait a minute. Wait, so here's my question, though. Couldn't they have just set up controls, though? That's possible, too, right?
On the ship?
Yeah, they could have had radio communication, for sure.
Well, who are you saying is doing who's doing the pan?
Well, only one person is flying the ship. Oh, it's moving, too.
Yeah, they're all no one's on the planet. That's the end of it.
What?
No one's on the moon. They left. That's the live stream of them leaving.
No. I understand nobody's on the moon, but what I'm saying is the camera could have been remote controlled.
Which would mean there would be a delay.
I would not think so. You wouldn't know the delay because you'd have to have a source and then the live stream source. I get where you're coming from, but I'm just speaking from how I understand the way radio communication works in addition to
currently.
When you're, and you know this in production, but there's a difference between video production and live streaming environments. I've done a little bit of live streaming production.
Yeah.
And I've also looked at like PTZ cameras.
Mm-hmm.
And so that way we don't have to have a cameraman. It's like you can have, we only have one camera, so it'd be a lot easier to do it that way.
Yeah.
And so if you're showing the pre-recorded footage, like if it was recorded, there are a lot of things that are coming to my mind. You can have a remote controlled camera, but then how do you get the footage? Is it being live broadcast? It could be wirelessly broadcasted from that camera. They could have developed technology for that.
No, they could
wireless communication for the motors to control the zoom and the pan and all that stuff. In addition
to
lag. Well, when you say lag, the perspective of lag, I'm trying to understand that. Do you mean lag? Because we have to understand the movements of the controls.
So right? I'll put it this way: movement of controls. Okay, so let's bring this into a relatable perspective. Let's say they had the technologies to. Of course, I think they did. Of course, move the camera. The capability was there to move the camera at NASA, right? They were controlling that camera once the astronauts left. They, in theory,
that's my thought process. They could.
I don't believe there was zero lag or delay. I should say zero delay between that rising and the person knowing when it was happening.
To that point, you make a good point. But you're talking about like there being no input lag from somebody, say at NASA, controlling it. My thought process was they were seeing it in the moon lander, like in the actual like ship they're in. They're controlling it, not NASA. That's my thought process. I could be wrong.
Yeah, but I think there would still be delay. It's real time. The moon lander is real time. It's real time.
Sure, the moon lander, there wouldn't be as much lag as there would be in NASA, right? Yeah. So in NASA, I can see your point, but then my question still, I'm trying to understand, because we're talking about just so everybody listening understands or watching, is that we're talking about the motorized input of somebody actually doing action of moving levers or joysticks or whatever.
Yeah.
Seeing the feed on their end, there being lag between their actions and it's showing on screen because they're reacting to what they see in the camera.
Not so much just their actions, but the delay on transmission.
That's kind of what I'm getting at. Like they're reacting to the live stream they're getting and then making movements, and that transmission lag is kind of where I'm getting at. Exactly. I can understand that, but I guess I'm trying to like pinpoint like the perspective of, because they're not showing the person moving the camera.
No.
So, but then I get your point. Man, that's a confusing, interesting point of view.
It's something that's speculated, right? Is who moved the camera, right? Who moved the camera? If it was someone back at NASA, how did the transmission happen so fast in real time that they were able to
make a really good point on that.
React and use the control to real time move it up? That's one thing. If it was people reacting from actually inside the lander, how would they have done that with an environment that was shaking profusely and launching? How would they have any time? They'd be like shaking in their chair.
Well, and then they have procedures too. So you have,
Yeah.
I mean, now that I think more about like a lot of the shit they had to do when they were lifting off,
Yeah.
just on
intense.
oxygen supply alone.
Yeah. There was a whole procedures that they had to do. Like they had some guy separate, like, hey, John, you're gonna man camera, all right? You're gonna get that pan. You're gonna be able to perfectly plan that pan as we're going up, right? When there's an explosion happening right under us and pushing us into orbit.
True. So I can
There's
get
a
off
lot
of that
going on.
point. I can get off on that point. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But here's the other thing too that I would like to make a point of.
Yeah.
NASA was very big about everything being down to the minute or down to the action, so they could do a lot of math on the speed of the vehicle, on where it would be. I mean, you can calculate that.
Yeah,
you can
very
literally
true.
calculate where it's going to, like the spacecraft, like where the spacecraft, first off, it's going to take off. Okay, cool. It's going to take this long to get across the frame. When it gets to this point, we want to start panning up. So there could have been like rehearsed. First off, they understood the math behind it, understood where it was going to be at a certain time. They could have like done all that. That's why when I watched it, it really kind of points out to me that it could have been a rehearsed like they did all these commands.
Yeah. And
then boom, that's kind of what you get. But that's why I see when I look at it, when I look back at it, I see how first off the ship is not directly in the center of the frame. They're trying to keep up with it. And like when they pan up, like they're having a hard time keeping it in frame. And I don't think they're focusing on actually trying to keep it in frame because it's a rehearsed set of actions. That makes sense too.
I mean, even the confetti that flies off of that thing.
Confetti?
No, the explosion itself is just like such like a party popper happening. Like if you watch it, it's like, what is that?
Let me see it again.
The explosion, like it's got this like it's such a weird.
Oh no! You know that's not confetti. That's like
I know it's not confetti. I said it has like this like confetti like look to it when it pops off.
But no, I mean I hear you. There's a lot of questions around that, and you make good points. Then the other people want to ask questions about the fact that why don't you see stars in the background?
And then people will say, "Oh, it's camera adjusting." Well, it's getting that.
Well, you have to understand the resolution. That's what I try to talk to people about too, is that there's so the thing that when people talk about these issues, there's a lot of facts that you need to get understood first. Absolutely. Just on the equipment by itself. Like just
what's the capability?
Purely on what the capability of these equipments, the technology at the time. So we were filming like even the Stargate SG-1 series, right? When I looked back, I was trying to find a 1080p version of it.
Yeah.
It was recorded in either 480p or 720p.
Yeah.
Because they were trying to broadcast that over the air or through cable, cable companies. They were trying to send that. So there had to be a resolution that wasn't difficult, right?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of why I believe the technology at the time, like at least in regards to the star issue, it's also possible that they had issues with the stars being seen because it was the focus wasn't great or just the way that, because I mean, that's kind of the argument whenever they see stuff in the ISS. There's been arguments about that too. And
okay, well, if that's the case, do you think this was the most technically advanced cameras at the time? Because if you look at,
I don't know for sure. I'm just going off of
from what I've heard from was it General Freire and the people who document a lot of the TikTok.
General, you mean Colonel
Freire? Colonel Freire. Sorry, apologies.
Yeah,
thank you for your service. From his recordings and the people who were with him.
Going back on the TikTok video, right?
Yeah, going back to the TikTok video and the other video of the similar one that was around the same time that they recorded.
Yeah.
What was released to the public was a extremely filtered version of it. Like that's why we saw like a black and white, very low resolution radar version.
Yeah.
Where from what I've heard, the actual footage of what they have is extremely high detailed and extreme, like all in color, not black and white. We're getting like the low end radar high contrast version.
My question is, why can't we get the full color? Why not get the high definition version of it?
I don't think they're ready to release that.
Why release it at all is a good question, right? Like, why? Yeah. That I didn't know there was a full HD color version of it.
And that's what they said in a couple different interviews and podcasts with the people who recorded it and discovered it. Is saying, hey, our technology that we have on the plane is completely different from the cameras that we have are of the best degree. We're the military, right? We have the best stuff. But what we released is like, it looks similar to this. I mean, the Tic Tac video almost looks the same quality as this, but this one actually
pretty much, and that's been my argument with any UFO shit ever, right? Yeah. Any UFO shit ever. My argument has always been
resolution.
Why is shit always pixelated?
Yeah,
we have fucking cell phones. Like, fuck, dude, the new iPhone 12 Pro, 10-bit video recording.
Yeah, that's insane.
The Samsung Ultra, Samsung 21, whatever, Ultra. Yeah, extra like big, whatever, big like 100 times zoom, like, you know. So I'm really surprised how there hasn't been actual high definition. I mean, hell, even DSLR cameras nowadays, we're using DSLR cameras right now. So if we were to take that, put actual zoom lens on it, and like go out there if somebody sees something, I'm just surprised we haven't seen some shit like that. Some real good high definition footage of I think
it's
UFOs.
It's part of the phenomenon experience. It happens so irregularly and so sporadic that you either so taken back that you just watch it and you don't record it,
right?
Or you do try to, like, for example, I've had 4 or 5 UFO experiences in my life, and the ones that lasted a long time, I had enough time to grab my phone and record them.
Oh, you have UFO videos?
I have 2.
Oh shit!
3 of them I do not have because it was such a quick experience that I shared with other people. I have 2. I have one thing that happened. It was more of a phenomenon that happened in Arizona when I was driving back from a business thing we did out in Phoenix. We were driving back through the middle of nowhere, and there was this huge event that kind of happened in the sky.
Wow.
And the other one was when I first moved back to California in 2015. There was a one of those classic UFOs that flew across the sky and then kind of did the spiral thing.
Yeah.
And then dispersed a bunch of light and then went back out. This is around the time. This is before Tesla was doing his launches. Now, if you look at Tesla's launches now, it looks kind of similar, except the fact that we see the missile do its thing, it has a big burst of light, and then comes back down, right? The Tesla launches, SpaceX launches. Yeah. They do the, it's very staged and very similar the whole entire time. You know, they do their up, they do their thing, they come back down. The one I saw in November 2015 was sporadic. Like, it wasn't a single back and forth movement. It did some things in the sky, zipped a couple different times, did a couple flashes, and then vanished. And that's similar to one of my experiences most like is some of the stuff they were seeing back in, I think was it Norway or Sweden a couple of years back. When I started researching a lot, seeing like who else had experiences like this and that kind of thing. And here's the other thing. The reason that also was not a SpaceX launch or anything else prior to them being launched as a company was they shut down all the airports that night.
Wait. Okay.
All the airports in Los Angeles and Orange County shut down that night.
Hold on. I need to listen to this wholeheartedly, and I got to piss really bad because this beer's
go ahead.
So, well, actually, I can't with the StreamYard, but that's okay. I'm going to note down the time. So 1 hour and 3 minutes. So
let's come back at 110 or 107 or something. Want to do that?
107. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. All right. Bye.
All right, we're back. That piss break was good, man. This beer's getting through me, man.
I'm still working on my first one. This is a bigger one though. It's a pint.
Dude, I appreciate those a lot more than like an actual 6-pack where it's like it looks like it's like 2.5 or 3 beers.
Yeah.
Yep. Those are great, man.
Yeah, not bad.
I like those a lot better. So we were talking about the technology, about the input lag or the transmission lag on the moon landing and the technology, and then we kind of transitioned into ISS and how the ISS cameras are better technology than the moon landing, but somehow when it comes to UFOs and stuff, in the whole spectrum, it just seems like there's nothing but pixelated footage. And I
Yeah.
was talking about how we have all these smartphones that have these amazing cameras, even DSLRs as well.
That's what we were talking about, the UFO I saw and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, UFO. So talk about that, man. Tell me about your experience. You were driving in Arizona. You were doing a project.
This is a brief.
Oh my God! Well, couldn't that kind of seem like a comet, like coming close to?
No way, it was a comet.
Are you serious?
Yeah, no way. I'll have to find the full video. That's just a little clip that I found that I put on Instagram such a long time ago. But I have a full video that the second I saw, I looked in the sky. I always look at the skies. That's something a lot of us do. I was looking at the skies when we got out of the car. My wife and I were about to go to dinner at this restaurant that was like an outdoor mall thing. And I looked up. And I don't know what made me look up, but I looked up and I saw a weird light. And then I noticed everyone around me was starting to look up. Like everyone getting out of their cars to go to the restaurants and stuff started to look up. We were all looking up. I'm like, what is that? What is that? What is that? It was just a white thing going across the sky. And then it started to be spontaneous with its movements. It wasn't just going like a missile, that goes just from one side to kind of arcs over.
Yeah.
It was kind of going different angles. And then it stopped, got really bright, and started pulsing, and then it did this huge spiral kind of thing, like, when you saw like the spiral lines, kind of like what you do see when missiles are high in the atmosphere just are defective and they kind of spiral out.
Yeah.
But this one did it for a certain amount of times while it was pulsing like really bright light, and it was very colorful light, like a very teal kind of light. And then it stopped pulsing and went back on its route, and then it just went up and vanished. It went poof. You can't see my hand because it's out of frame, but it went one direction and then just went directly up like 90 degrees and vanished. So now, if it was a missile, I've watched multiple of the SpaceX launchings, and I've seen a lot of what that looks like. It's funny. Another time, I just kind of get lucky with these things.
Because you're talking about LA shutting down all the airports. Talk about that.
Oh, yeah. Orange County shut down their airport the second that happened. LA County shut down their airport the second it happened. So all the airports...
Wait. Are we talking about that Blue Teal thing still? Or are we talking about the SpaceX
same day.
launch?
This is the same day.
Same day as your restaurant?
Yeah,
UFO
my restaurant
thing?
experience. Yeah.
Oh, shit. Okay.
Because I've always been subscribed to those apps that tell you what's going on in terms of like major shutdowns or
what app are we
civil
talking about?
unrest and stuff, that kind of stuff. Now a lot of those are gone, but there's one right now called, this is a good civil one you should do. It's called I think it's actually called Citizen. Citizen is a really good app that's out now. That has, if there's anything going on in your area of the woods or close to your area of the woods, it will tell you like, hey, there's protests on this exit. There's military presence in this area, that kind of thing. Citizen is a good one.
Is it Citizen Connect?
Does it have a black and white logo?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's it.
With the half white circle?
Yes.
I'm getting it now.
Yeah, so I got a bunch of notifications, and this is, by the way, 2 miles away from the Orange County Airport as well. So I was hearing all the verifications of them being shut down. They had to they landed all the planes. It was on the news that night too that everything got shut down. So this was like widely saw by a lot of people. At first they were trying to this is before SpaceX once again. So at first they were trying to.
You said before the company ever, or before the company?
They were doing public launches.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, a couple years prior, about 2 years prior, before they were doing their first launches out in that area. And this thing was, and when they do the SpaceX launches, they're so high up that people in other states see them. I'm sure you're familiar with that.
Yeah.
So, for example, when I saw us, I happened to be out in Joshua Tree, which is in the middle of the desert in California. You can see every star, anything possibly flying in the air.
Joshua Tree?
Yeah, Joshua Tree.
Awesome.
Like there's very little light pollution out there. I happened to accidentally capture when I was trying to do galaxy shots on my photography. I was doing galaxy shots.
I love those, dude.
I happened to I had no idea that there was a SpaceX launch that night. So I happened to accidentally catch one of the SpaceX things, and I got to see what that whole thing looks like. And it was nothing like my experience that was 2 years prior. They're actually 3 years prior. So if you look at this...
if you don't break your phone.
See if I can. This guy.
I see it. Oh, that's a galaxy shot?
That's SpaceX missile. and that's the stars and stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't have my manual focus on right now, but
Well, do you? I think I don't know if it's just me that has the option to share screen, but can you share screen? If so, why
it's my
don't you
phone though.
airdrop it to yourself? Airdrop
Well,
it to the laptop and share screen.
it's not. I could do a screenshot, I guess.
Well, I guess my question is that an actual photo that you took?
This is on my Instagram. It's not on the
Oh,
phone.
okay,
I have
okay,
a new
okay.
phone. I
Yeah.
haven't
You
brought
can
my
do a
old photos
screenshot,
there.
bro. Yeah, do a screenshot. I want to see that.
Let me see. Pull it up really quick. So I saw the entire experience of a missile taking off from SpaceX and landing back down from the desert, and that looked entirely different than my experience back when I saw the actual thing in November 2 years prior at the restaurant situation. Where the heck? Why is this not working? Trying to multitask here.
Yeah, I'm just setting up the app, trying to understand.
Yeah, since they might have it for your area, they might not. As far as like updates, they're
Yeah,
kind
they
of a
do.
newer company.
I mean,
What's
it's just amazing.
what's the major city by you?
Shreveport,
Okay,
Louisiana,
how
or
far
you
are
can
you
just do
from how far are you from New
Dallas.
Orleans?
6 hours. New Orleans is
You're in
6 hours.
Texas though, right?
No, I'm not.
You're in.
Just
I see.
Google Barksdale Air Force Base in Louisiana.
That's right. You're in Louisiana. My apologies.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me see if I can pull this up here. You think you'll stay out there for a while?
We're looking to buy a house, but we're not looking to like 5 year turnaround. No. Within 5 years, we're going to be in an RV traveling around.
That's
like
the goal too. That's
our
awesome.
10-year goal is to have at least one property in every major city. So we want to have a property in Phoenix, property in Dallas, property in Houston, property in Florida, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
I actually don't know how I can share screen. There it is. Okay.
So it's saying the spread of COVID is decreasing.
Your state says that?
For Bossier Parish, but then it's funny, it goes to the virus in Louisiana overall is slowly increasing, but it's like it has stats for.
Ours has been saying it's incredibly increasing, and I don't know if you've
Yeah.
been following what's happening in LA County.
No.
It's insane. The governor or the mayor has now done lockdowns between 10 p.m. and 5 a.m.
Yeah. I think my buddy Aiden, who actually lives in San Francisco, was telling me about that. So this is interesting. It uses like an entire map. This is crazy, dude.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting app, right?
Well, we're kind of stuck on that. But what are you looking up?
All right. Well, I was just trying to pull this up. I don't know why it's being weird.
The photo?
Yeah. This is a screenshot of my zoomed in. Do you see it on your screen? Is it showing it?
Are you sharing your screen?
Yeah, I am.
We have to share your screen with the within StreamYard.
Share. I am. Chrome has lost permission to capture the. Oh man. I see what the problem is. You might have to cut this part of the podcast.
I'll try to do that. Let me make a note.
Yeah, make a note.
Here.
System preferences, security and privacy. Security and privacy. There you are.
I wish I could remap the button to switch devices on this mouse.
What do you mean?
Because the button to switch devices is right here.
Oh.
Like right there.
Okay.
That's
what do you have? The MX3? What do you have?
Yep. We both have the same mouse. The switch button. I wish it was the button that you use to change the speed of the scroller.
Yeah.
If we could remap that, I tried to look in the settings, but we can't remap it.
All right, let's see if this works now.
Because it's a freaking pain to pick up the mouse and press the button. First world problems, you know what I mean?
Yes, now it should be sharing. It shows it on my thing.
Yeah, it does. It does. This might have been the problem. Is when you were sharing it, I didn't notice it. It pulls up as another stream, so I'm adding that now.
Okay, so
I can see it now.
There's the photo.
Holy hell, dude!
So this is a zoomed in screenshot of my Instagram photo, so it's very, very low res.
Dude, but the freaking stars, man, looks dope.
Yeah, I highly recommend if you've never been out to. I mean, you live all the way in Louisiana, but
Joshua Tree? No,
if you're
I
ever in
mean we're down to
California,
take a trip.
if you're ever in California, go to Joshua Tree. Honestly, it's otherworldly. It's an amazing place to
Wow.
camp and to reflect and to have awesome hikes and views. But it has also some of the best stargazing you'll ever have because the light pollution is very minimal.
Right.
The light pollution you see in that photo is from a town very, very far away. But it's minimal, so you can see especially when there's no moon and stuff. You can see the galaxy. Like if I pulled some of my other photos, I'll probably pull them up. But you can see the Milky Way and everything just perfectly.
And just so I describe this for people listening, so basically he's showing a photo, and if you want to check this out, you need to go to the YouTube version of this podcast and go to 1 hour and 45 minutes or so. And if the timestamp is wrong because of editing, my apologies, but it's going to be around that time period.
Yeah, minus 10 minutes for a break or so, I think, right?
You're right about that, yeah.
Yeah.
Give or take 10 or 20 minutes, but if you just scroll through it on YouTube, you'll see it. It's where we're sharing the screen and stuff like that, so you'll see it. But basically, if you're not willing to do that or care for it, basically what's going on is he's showing a photo. It's a screenshot of an Instagram post, and on the top section of the photo, it's just nothing but black with stars. If you ever stargazed, you know what I'm talking about with that. And then it goes into a little bit of what the entity or vehicle or phenomenon is. And then below it is a little bit of light pollution showing the silhouette of trees and the horizon and stuff like that.
So that's a confirmed. This was a confirmed SpaceX. So I double checked on everything. So that's a SpaceX launch.
It was SpaceX.
Yeah.
Well, what's weird is like what is it? It's interesting to find out like what's causing that.
Yeah, just high in the atmosphere and the pressures of different liquids and stuff that it releases. As it goes through the colder atmospheres.
That's true.
That's my understanding of why it does what it does. Is you're seeing a mixture of gasoline and other things kind of popping off on it. I'm gonna throw one more photo so you can get some reference of what an actual galaxy photos look like. No problem. I'm still putting it up here, anyways.
Cool.
Once I have it all, you can see it.
I wish I could do hotkeys. That would actually be cooler. Hotkeys with switching between the different things. I wonder.
Probably could. Do you have a switcher? Little board?
Not the switcher, but StreamYard. Like I don't know if there's a way to map the buttons. This is where we get into being granular. See, like I would love to get a setup where I can control everything through a switcher.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And basically all that happens inside of StreamYard is essentially a
live feed of whatever.
It's like, basically it's just a virtual camera, but everything else is controlled in a different software. Would be pretty cool. Yeah. But one of the issues with that is with StreamYard, I had to invite you to that. So I'd have to have StreamYard full screened and another monitor. I don't know. Yeah. It's an interesting question, but well, actually, I take that back. Because then we still got to find a medium. Because the medium for you and I to video chat right now is through StreamYard. But if I were to use like Restream, we'd still have to find a way for you and I to communicate. That's very interesting. I want to look and see if there's an option for that to where we can just have the video and audio chat, and we prioritize the video codec and the audio codec and the protocols that make that happen. Because people don't know the protocols that Skype uses are actually really good protocols for video and audio chatting, but they really kind of they really kind of pull that back or give.
Yeah, you have to find the perfect communication between all of them of what should go before in the staging and the other things. So it's a process, man. It's not as easy as everyone thinks it is to just get up and running with a very high quality, highly functional and effective podcast. Like it's video podcast.
For sure.
Very different, especially live streaming. So if you go switch my screen now, you can see a comparison photo of the same area, but with a galaxy photo. So that's the Milky Way.
Wow.
It's a very old. Man. This is like a very old camera setup. But that was my first. This is my first time ever doing it. Actually, this weekend.
The wife would love this, dude. This is gorgeous. To describe it to people listening, again, this is a little bit after the original photo, but would be around an hour 50 mark, minus give or take 10 to 20 minutes. Yeah. But essentially, it's just if you can Google galaxy photos. It's just you got the Milky Way kind of in the middle, slanted about 15 degrees. You got some, stars, and you got the silhouette behind the horizon. Really beautiful photo.
Thanks, man. It was my first attempt doing galaxy photos. It's a lot harder than it looks. And you're doing everything in the pitch dark, so you kind of have to like bring a flashlight with you and make sure your settings, and you're kind of winging it on your settings because you don't really know how much light you need for how long you need. So watching videos.
So this is a long exposure.
Yeah, it's a long exposure. That's exactly what it is. It's a bulb
it's not
exposure.
Just a straight click. It's a long exposure.
It's a long exposure. And first time doing it. This photo was from. But it's a ton of fun. I wish I would have got more into the hobby. I'd like to get back into it. Just costing money to get the gear, and you have to go out in the middle of nowhere, so it's a little time consuming. But it's fun. No. I mean, there's a lot of people who are a lot better than me. But
we would love to do it because the traveling will give us the ability to be in areas with less light pollution. So I'm pretty interested in that. But I think at the end of the day, when we get our land, because our end goal, like I said, the 10-year plan, we want to do. We want to buy land that we call home.
Yeah,
and we want to build properties on it for us to live in, for family to live in. Mainly, we want to build generational wealth, family wealth, stuff that allows us to, not let family worry.
Prosper
like want to prosper together. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like my brother's a really smart guy. He just had some shit happen to him in life, and if given the right opportunities and situation, he could really do a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah.
But with a lot of the societal shit weighing him down, and he's human too, you know what I mean? So I love him to death, but he's dealing with his own shit and navigating life the way that he knows how, just like we all are. Yeah. And so the things that I agree or disagree with aside, with all family members, one thing I do agree with and think that is the main reason why I'm doing this is because for all of that, I think it's important that every family member be able to have a place to lay their head, call home, and feel safe and comfortable. You know what I mean? Like my mom, she's got health issues and stuff like that. So one of the main reasons why I want to do that as well is because I want to have a place for her to live, so that she can not worry. She's fighting for Social Security, bro, and like Social Security's not even going to be around. And I'm worried about that because of the way they're the way they're messing them with that shit, dude. Like, grabbing from it, stealing from it, like. It's not going to be around. I can't trust it. Even if she gets it, it's not something that she can probably trust long term.
Well, I mean, this ties right nicely into other topics of kind of like global resets in terms of economy and finances and where we're kind of going with currencies and stuff. I mean,
right? Yeah, we did want to talk about that.
Is that maybe their solution is to the way they can get rid of some of these programs that they promised over the years that we, Social Security and all these kind of welfare kind of things,
right,
is by securing a future world that money works differently. And from my understanding, let's just get right into it. Let's talk about the Great Reset. That's basically where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
Great Reset always has been a conspiracy theory. It's basically referring to, let me pull up some things here so I don't sound like a goofus when I'm talking about this.
It's cool. Yeah, it's definitely one thing we want to talk about, and I didn't know much about this. I've heard it in like some YouTube videos I've looked into, but the things that you can tangibly, regardless if you believe it or not, the New York Times wrote an article, and
they had a whole magazine on it.
There you go, whole magazine. I'll probably forget the link, but you can Google it just like we do.
Yeah, time.com/Great Reset is what I'm looking at right now.
There you go. So it was Times, not the New York Times?
No, this is Time Magazine.
Time Magazine. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So I mean, the things that you want to pay attention to right now in your day-to-day life, how does it apply to what's going on right now, is the coin shortages, okay?
Yeah.
When you go to stores, they're like, and here's what I don't like, though, about it. I was at Kroger, and basically if you're paying with cash, which everybody's paying with card anyways, it's kind of what we're getting used to. So it's not necessarily going to affect. The problem is I can see how the progression, regardless of an agenda behind it, would have eventually gotten to a point where coins would have been kind of done away with, if you think about it, because of the fact that, or maybe not all coins, but like pennies maybe, because they cost more to create than they actually are worth, from what I understand. I could be wrong
They did.
on
that. You're correct. They did. I don't think currently they don't. But when they were using a heavier amount of copper, they were having that issue. As the price of goods and materials in terms of the metals, the precious metals, when that raised, is when they had the issues when they were creating a bunch of pennies. But now I think they believe it's mainly, I don't want to be wrong about this, it's some other form of non-precious metal, mainly used for pennies. But yeah, no, you're correct though, that they did have that problem.
Yeah.
And I mean, they had that problem with all of them. Like back when they were giving quarters that actually had silver, and then those quarters are worth like $50 a piece now, because it's just a whole different level of what the actual value of, it's the gold standard, right? What the actual metal standards are.
Right. And so for me, quarters are great.
Yeah.
But when you get into dimes, nickels, and pennies, I think it becomes really unnecessary.
Yeah.
I'm not a mathematician or an economist. I don't know how the impact would be getting rid of pennies, nickels, and dimes, but quarters I think are good. It brings me back to kind of how people would back in the day. It wasn't like, because think about it. When you look at movies that talk about things back in the day, like hundreds of years ago, or maybe 1,000 years ago, even before BC time period, it was like, oh, that would be 10 gold coins, or that'd be like 2 gold coins, or 10 doubloons, or whatever. You know what I mean? Like it was. The prices were set on things based on just a full 100% amount. There wasn't like all this other stuff. You know what I mean? Even if you were to do tax on that, it'd be like, all right, so it's 10 gold coins with tax. You're looking at about 12, right?
Mm-hmm.
Easy math. And so I kind of see a world where that might be the thing again. But then again, I can see the digital progression. But you were talking about the Great Reset?
Yeah,
go ahead.
Great Reset, like I said, it's always been considered a conspiracy theory, especially it having to do with like New World Order and that kind of thing, which we won't even get into because that's a whole other podcast in itself. But it basically just means there's the global elitists who are working to have everything under a certain type of power and control, where us as society are controlled to fit their agendas better. To better help the wealthy, to better help the elitist people. That's the gist of it, right? And usually it's not into the best interest of us, citizens of the world.
Right.
That's the gist of the New World Order. I'm not going to go crazy into that. I'm not going to be Alex Jones. But it's funny. The Great Reset has been brought up a lot this year because of what's going on with COVID. And like you said, we're seeing shortages in multiple things, not just coins, but numerous food shortages going on, supply shortages going on.
Food shortages?
Mm-hmm. There's a great YouTuber called the Ice Age.
I don't understand from my perspective, simply because we have all the supplies we need. I haven't experienced that, so go on.
Yeah, many haven't. Only certain areas have, and you probably actually did experience it many times. Where did you ever hear? I don't know if your stores did, but all the stores in California, for example, we had limits on how much meat we could buy during certain.
Oh yeah, no, that happened. No, that definitely happened. But that was when the whole, everybody was bitching about toilet paper, which is the fucking hilarious thing for everybody to be bitching about. And then here's the beautiful savior on the internet going, get a bidet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But then all those sold out.
Paper, just get a bidet.
Yeah.
But I don't understand why that was a big deal. But then, no, I remember seeing Walmart bare, dude. There was no meats, no nothing. But the problem was, it was just like gasoline in the state of Texas. When the hurricanes damaged the oil refineries, people thought that there was a problem with gas or oil or whatever. That wasn't the fact. But the fact was that, like, on a regular basis, there is an amount of supplies of anything that is delivered based on demand. So they will send a certain amount. When that demand increases without preparation, they can't stock things fast enough. Mm-hmm. So that's where people get the misunderstanding that, oh no, we're going to die. Everything's going to end. Like, no, dumbass. Like, just understand the way economics work, the way supply and demand works. Like, the supply chain is set up in such a way that the oil reserves in Texas was it was sufficient enough. They actually had more reserves than, but it was the issue of getting that supply where it needed to go.
Which is correct for goods, right? As far in terms of things you can buy. But for the food, what was happening was this normal scheduling of what is supposed to be bought and distributed and released to restaurants and specialty shops and that kind of stuff was all delayed for multiple reasons, not just because the restaurant's being shut down, and for other
really?
important areas being shut down, but what also was happening was they were having. I don't know where to say this. They were also having to all this extra food that usually was being shipped out had to be thrown out. So the crops that, like, say they had
What?
10
It had to be thrown out.
Yeah, because they're on a schedule with that food, meaning that like if it's not out by this date to those restaurants, it will be bad in 2 weeks. And they were overpiling. Like I don't know if you remember seeing the footage of all of the pigs in the huge ditches being thrown out and all the potatoes being thrown out at some of these huge fields, these huge farmer fields in the middle of America, because they couldn't. There was no supply. There was no demand for them because they weren't able to ship them out to their usual distributors who were taking them. And not just that, those same farms were the ones that were coincidentally shut down for a lot of reasons because of the coronavirus, right? They were saying that all these middle America workers were getting coronavirus, like 300 of the employees on the farm were getting sick. Remember that? All that going on? Yeah. So they had an issue with their supply not being distributed. They had an issue with all this overcrop that had to be destroyed, and then they had an issue with no one to work to to tend to the crops and do all this stuff. So it was like this huge issue. Yeah, there was a lot of variables going on to why we had issues with food. And from my understanding, they fixed a little bit of some of those issues, but we have not seen the real repercussions of what's to come.
I can acknowledge that because I have, at least from a small standpoint, been able to see and understand the realities of all these small businesses shutting down, and the results of a lot of things just haven't hit yet.
Yep.
So the shortages in the long term are going to have a large effect.
Yeah.
So that becomes, tax revenue is lower, or a lot of issues just kind of, economically.
Yeah.
A lot of factors come together and they really kind of affect things in a bigger way.
Yeah, and so along with all that, the farms themselves have been having historic drought issues and historic issues with crop sicknesses and that kind of thing.
Yeah,
it's interesting. I've been following. There's this farmer I follow who I've been following before the pandemic. His name's Ice Age Farmer. That's his name.
Ice Age Farmer?
Yeah, he's on YouTube. Okay. But he talks about the states of the economy, the states of farming, the states of agriculture. And he predicted what was going to happen with the coronavirus in terms of supply and demand and shortages and stuff. He was saying, hey, this is going to happen. Watch out for this. Supply up on this. Grab this. Kind of like a prepper channel almost. It wasn't that initially. Initially, it was like how to harvest, heritage seeds and how to plant an organic style natural farm so you can have all this. But and once the pandemic hit, like a lot of channels, it turned into talking about pandemic and the seriousness and that kind of thing. But he's been on the side of this is like the shortages and that kind of thing, everything with agriculture where they're not talking about on the news. So I highly recommend following him and listening to some of his talks, because he goes into detail of what's really going on in agriculture in Middle America and how it's going to affect things next year and stuff. But that's basically that has to do into the Great Reset. Of course, we're talking about things.
You said that was Ice Age Farmer.
Ice Age Farmer, yeah.
Before I interrupted you. You were mentioning another YouTuber that talks about. Were you going to mention Ice Age Farmer?
Yeah, that was what I was going to mention.
Okay, I just want to be sure.
That's the guy. Ice Age and Dutch Sense. If you don't watch those guys, you need to watch them.
And what's for people listening? What's the guy that does the earthquake monitoring?
It's Dutch Sense. It's DUTCHSINSE, I believe is how you spell that. But this guy's phenomenal. He does all he does is spend all his days and hours live streaming events that are going along the world in terms of geological events. So he'll look at all the earthquakes, where the plates are shifting, that kind of stuff. He'll also monitor fires and that kind of thing. But
it's really crazy though, because his setup is just a screen recording of this tool that he uses. Mm-hmm. I don't know if he made it himself or I don't know. But I
think he hired someone to collaborate with all this information from these sites, the USGS and all that kind of thing.
Yeah,
and he pulls that information into his system, and it shows real time like 3D mappings of what's going on in
Yeah.
the world, and it's fascinating.
It's really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
I love it. It's
Yeah.
very, very, very visually pleasing. I really enjoy it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to watch him for a long time to get sort of the
The
idea of what he's
vibe. Yeah.
doing, the vibe.
Absolutely.
But
Yeah.
it's hard to get into one episode because you're like, oh, I'm looking for this one thing, and so just it's one of those things you got to follow him. And then when he has bangers, definitely follow up.
Yeah. I mean, the dude has lightweight predicted many major earthquake events before the USGS even announced anything. Like, the guy follows swarm earthquakes in different areas of the fault lines and stuff, and has, based on his research and his knowledge, has been able to say, okay, I can see that there's a swarming of small quakes here, which means we're going to have a major earthquake event along this fault line here at this point. And he's been spot on a lot of those. Like the major ones we had in California this year, he called it like a week prior.
Wow.
He called these events happening. And so it's like, he always questions the USGS and says, okay, if I'm able to look at the research and see this data and be able to predict some of these things happening, why aren't our government organizations doing something similar? You know what I mean? It's possible, based off of empirical data of what's going on, to somewhat predict events of this nature, So he gets a little frustrated with that, and he's definitely a free thinker guy. He looks up all these alternative history and that kind of thing. He looks into everything. One would call him somewhat a conspiracy theorist, but he bases his evidence in fact. Yeah. He's a guy that believes in direct energy weapons. Then one day he was live streaming and accidentally caught it on his radars.
I gotta look that shit up because we were going to talk about.
So when the California fires were happening, he was live streaming all the events, and he caught a couple different instances of infrared high beam technology being caught on his sensors, going from one state to another into areas where they were having fires in California. So I'm from California. I don't know if I told the audience that yet. So it's what's going on with the fires is a mixture of things happening in the climate, mixture of things happening with poor management of the forests, and then magic events that don't really have any explanation, like we were talking about earlier with some buildings being burnt down, but the tree next door wasn't.
That stuff doesn't make any sense.
There's some weirdness. There's high strangeness is what we call it, right? High strangeness happening with a lot of these events. So it's not always what they sprint on the news about just being climate change. That's always been the big. Every couple of decades, there's things you have to be scared of according to the news. And right now we're back on climate change, right? 20 years ago, that was a big threat, and then it was gone for a while. Now it's back, So not that it's not true, but it's just something you have to do more research on. That's all. I think that's a lot of people just want to believe what they hear on the news, unfortunately.
Yeah. So on the direct energy, because I just pulled up one of his videos. I'm not going to watch it right now, but I'm going to check it out later. But the one thing that I heard in regards to a story is, first off, you have to just ask the question, why, right? Why would there be direct energy weapons? Number one. Number two, you also have to ask the question, if it's American, or if not American, but like secret.
Yeah.
Because, there's a lot of talk about deep state. There's a lot of talk about secret space programs. There's a lot of talk about all these different things. The biggest question that arises for me is, if it's our own government, but they're unaware. Because the thing, I have this sort of belief. I have this belief that our government, there's a difference between our government that operates the day-to-day. There's a difference between the president. There's a difference between the deep state. There's a difference between the deep space program, or the secret space programs, stuff like that. I think there's a lot of different entities. I just think there's key people in certain areas in the government and even the Pentagon and the military. For example, when you hear of money going missing, my opinion is that money is going to fund secret space programs, secret black
programs,
black projects, stuff like that. Things that, because think about it. There was hearings before 9/11. And it doesn't matter whether it was actually the government or the president or whoever was aware, even if they weren't aware. Let's just say it was like a covert operation. They shot the airplanes into the buildings, but there's arguments to be made about 9/11. We don't have to dive too deeply into it, but basically the theory is that there was actual explosions in different buildings before they even any debris touched them.
Don't even go down it, because there's so many, right? There's so many.
That's true.
Ways. I would say this. It'll go along with what you're saying. Is whether you believe what happened that day was real or not, the things that took place prior and the things that took place during and afterwards involving our government were real.
Exactly. Like the $3 trillion or whatever, the amount of money that was
2
missing,
trillion.
and there was
Yeah.
a hearing, $2 trillion.
Yep.
And
Rumsfeld.
they were questioning him, and then all of a sudden the financial building with the financial records,
the exact area of the Pentagon where all that research was, where all those records was hit, with no scorch marks around of where the fire happened. I don't know. There's so much things to go into that one, but yeah, that exact area was hit, and not to mention the Patriot Act,
the fuselage.
Yep, fuselage, the Patriot Act, which is written in yeah. We're getting crazy here, but the Patriot Act, which was written into law the day after it happened, like it was ready to go. And as everyone knows, bills and acts and all laws don't take 24 hours to be written up and then implemented. They had that ready to go because they wanted it ready to go, which was a huge impact on our freedoms here in America and changed the course of history of what citizens were spied on, right? As far as what our NSA and all that kind of stuff. This all goes into Snowden and all that craziness. But
which, by the way, he judges have actually said that what he did was not illegal.
Bro, he's a patriot.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited to see what's going to happen in the next couple presidencies to see if he's going to get pardoned. Yeah,
there's a lot of push right now. In fact, a Democratic nominee, Tulsi Gabbard, do you know who that is?
Oh, she's amazing.
Dude, that's the only Democratic person I'd ever vote for.
Bro, I would vote for her in a heartbeat.
Absolutely. I'm kind of a weird mix of. I'm a libertarian, so I'm more in the center of everything.
Yeah,
but I want a weird mix of like people in house, right? I don't think it should be just Republican, just Democrat. I want a weird mix. I want like a Dan Crenshaw and a Tulsi Gabbard kind of house. You know what I mean? I want people who have good ideals, who are good people, and they stand for what they believe in.
Right.
I want a mix of people like that.
What's important about that too, though, is I don't believe politicians who haven't had military service. I don't believe those politicians to be voting on wars or anything that has to do with war, with any type of military budget spending.
If you did not serve your country, you could not represent it. I think.
I do agree with that. I think that's actually really important. I think that's a good idea. But I also think here's the problem with where we're at nowadays. Because there's so many different type of illnesses or ailments or whatever you're born with, I don't love the idea that there's a lot of, and I've experienced this because I was in the military for a short stint. I enlisted in the U.S. Army, and I was medically discharged. It wasn't honorable, but it was a general discharge. But technically it was because of my ears. I can hear just fine, but somehow I fail those damn tests, and it's really dumb because it's just high frequency hearing loss. I can hear just fine.
What level did you cut off at?
I don't remember, but was it
a frequency level that why you didn't hear?
Yeah, high frequency. First off, I was disqualified because in the Army they do primary MOS and a secondary MOS. My primary MOS was 18 X-ray. I was a Special Forces recruit. So, woohoo! I was trying to be a badass.
Awesome.
I did a lot of training and a lot of research into it, and realized that it was going to be one of the most hardest things I would ever do in my life. Even if I failed it or succeeded, it didn't matter. So if I passed the 2 weeks of hell originally, but now it's 3 weeks in hell, if I would have passed it, the thing is people don't understand. You have to do testing, so like you don't even get selected. There's, I think, and I could be wrong on this, but I was under the impression, based on the research that I did, there's 2 levels of acceptance. One of them is peer reviewed, so your peers have to review you. In addition, then you get selected by those people that are selected based on the peers, because that's important, right? After that, that's where I felt like I would succeed. I would succeed well in that area because I was very good at being a team player. In the environment of we're all working like this is like the most, not vulnerable, but like when you're in a hole or dragging through mud with your buddy, like there is nothing stronger than the bond between 2 brothers in the field of battle. I'm not saying I experienced that, but I'm just saying from what I learned,
it's a different level of trust.
Exactly. Getting to that point of like literally I had the JAG office that I had did a lot of the exit processing out of the military was across the street from airborne training at Fort Benning, Georgia. And so that was like a super hard thing to deal with because I had airborne in my contract. But but yeah, 18 X-ray was the primary MS. The secondary was 11 Bravo, so infantry.
Mm-hmm.
I would have been more than happy to go through infantry. It would have sucked, but
Yeah.
I would have preferred to serve at all. Like I would have preferred to serve doing anything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Than not serve at all. And so, but that's kind of back to the point. The main thing is, it doesn't matter what your issue is. There's always points in the military. There's always jobs.
Yep.
If you're bound by wheelchair, all you got to do is, if you have use of your arms, you can be trained on how to use a firearm. Okay, so you can go to the range. You can train on how to use a firearm. That's where I feel like our military is super weak. In just my opinion. Number one, shootings on bases. I don't understand why military does not have handguns. Everybody's armed. I don't understand that point. That does not make sense to me. Reason being is because if the people were armed on base, when there was a shooting because somebody was having a psychoactive episode or whatever the case, mental breakdown, doesn't matter. There would have been more people able to take down that person so they don't harm other people. That's just my belief. I'll take the example from Israel. So people don't know the story from that, but Israel, one of the reasons why when you go visit, everybody's pretty much carrying an AK or a rifle of some sort, or they're always carrying weapons.
Yeah.
It was because they got caught off guard. And some say it was God or whatever, blah, 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 but they got caught off guard and they were being invaded, but the invaders turned tail and ran because they thought based on what everything looked like that there was an ambush and they were going to be taken advantage of. It was weird, but since that situation, I don't know the particulars, you can Google it. Yeah. But they've always been armed since then. So you'll see like women or people on the beach just carrying guns with them.
Well, that's pretty standard in other countries like Israel. They all have to go through the 2 years of service.
Right. Every citizen goes through military. Yes.
Which I think is a brilliant idea, actually. I think it makes you respect your country and makes you respect what people fight for you, and when they respect firearms and life, the value of life, everything.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think there's always parts of the military that there's
high value.
Well, because they have. So in the military, the term is low manned, right? Yeah. So maintenance is low manned. There's a lot of areas in the military that are low manned, but you could fix that, right? So they've actually, the military, I don't know if it's just the Army, but I remember hearing that they were talking about changing the physical requirements for computer-based jobs. Yeah. Not to say they're going to let like just fat fuckers come in and just sit on their fat ass and do nothing. Yeah. But they were trying to understand that, okay, the warfare is different. Yep. And there needs to be a place in which, we understand that the reality of this person getting stationed in a combat area, or rather their job may not be combat. They may go on tour, but the tour where they're stationed, that's qualified as a tour, or going overseas or whatever, they may not be in a combat zone. Yeah. So you can go on tour and be stationed in Europe, but you're not in a combat zone. So there's a lot of areas, in my opinion, that I feel like, people even wheelchair bound, because there's combatives in the military too. And there's a lot of things people could learn. In my opinion, I don't see that. I don't see because we've been in all intents and purposes, there's never been battles on American soil since there were battles on American soil. And so I feel like the country as a whole has gotten kind of laxed despite the wars that we've been into. With the wars we've been into, we've gone to other countries. And so I feel like over the past 100 years, we've kind of become laxed in the sense of how
perspective is warped.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know everything that happens. Obviously, I'm not in the intelligence community. Yeah. I'm not in any of the circles of people that know. I don't have any intel jobs. So I don't know the real stuff that happens that's not made aware to the public, obviously. So I'm speaking of what I know. But it's my belief that I feel like, every citizen should be able to serve or made to serve in some sort of capacity so they understand. In addition, but mainly on my point of the politicians making decisions on military assets or budgets or even wars for that matter. I mean, I just don't think people that haven't served should be making decisions on whether we stay in a country and occupy it or not for security reasons or otherwise. It doesn't matter. Yeah.
It's a totally different perspective than someone actually who's done the
exactly.
Work. Yeah.
So we kind of went on a couple of tangents, but with the Great Reset though, overall, could you bird's eye view it?
Bird's eye view. Well, I'll give it to you the way. I'm not going to give you the conspiracy way. I will give it to you what is currently being discussed and how they're framing it to not sound like a conspiracy. So if you go to, there's a couple of different ways to look at this. You can go to that Times article and you can read a lot of things going on there. You can go to the World Economic Forum has a whole thing on the Great Reset, which is definitely worth looking at it. But the interesting thing is it's always been about resetting the finances to possibly a digital currency. You know, we're hearing a lot with the Bitcoin, and that going into things like digital IDs and digital wallets and all that kind of thing, which is already some things that are subtly pushed by like Apple and stuff, introducing all that, the digital wallet and that kind of thing.
Yeah, you got Android from the software development standpoint. They're working on digital driver license.
Yeah, and we're already kind of getting there. I mean, I think what Bill Gates also has the ID 2020 initiatives that he's been trying to do for a long time. That guy's been a lot of bad press this year for a lot of his involvement in a lot of this kind of things.
Well, he owns patents to certain COVID viruses
and initiatives and agendas that support Great Reset and other type of elitist kind of things.
Probably a whole nother podcast in itself.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk about it. But the Great Reset is it's interesting. It's always been considered it's a conspiracy theory. And at the beginning of the pandemic, that's what everyone said. COVID-19 is not associated with the Great Reset happening, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of this year, they've been announcing quietly, and Trudeau said this. I think, what's the guy overseas, the blonde-haired Trump over there.
Blonde-haired Trump.
Talking the guy in Britain. I can't think of his name.
Yeah, I think
Boris. They've all had very similar phrasing of what they want to do. They're all saying basically these words that the pandemic of COVID-19 has given us an opportunity to rethink the world and build back better. Now, does that campaign sound familiar to you? Build back better?
Make the world great again.
No.
I don't know.
Are you familiar with the Build Back Better, what those words are? That's what Biden ran for in his campaign. That was his slogan, Build Back Better. That was Boris's campaign, Build Back Better. That was Trudeau's, Build Back Better. They are all using the same words to define what's going on in the world. And so why this is kind of frightening is multiple reasons. But let me pull up the way they're framing this, now that it's not a conspiracy theory anymore. They're saying a better economy is possible, but what we need to do is reimagine capitalism to do so. So they're wanting to change capitalism completely. And the ways they're doing that is they're talking about they're all trying to tie this to climate change too, which is the other kind of weird factor here. But they're mainly talking about going to digital currency standards, getting rid of the dollars, getting rid of that things that have been used and commonplace ever since they were put into place here in the U.S. especially. But this isn't just they're talking about the U.S. They're talking about Canada's going to do it. Britain's going to do it. They're all going to get rid of these common ways we were paying people out and doing that kind of thing. The way money was exchanged in the economy. Yeah. And the goal is the goal in conspiracy terms is if they were to get rid of these currencies and move to digital currency, everything is trackable, everything is traceable, everything is controllable, right? So say your days of going to wash someone's car for $100, out of their own pocket, that's be gone.
That's a good point of view, man. Like, how do you start a small business that's not? Oh, that's crazy.
How do you get rid of small time under the table people making money? You introduce a system where
a lot of illegals that are getting under the table cash.
We can trace every single dollar. We can trace every single transaction. If everything's on a digital standard, nothing is hidden. Nothing is to the advantage of the citizen. You lose the freedom of a free market to make your money, right? Everything has to be on the books, on the tables, or whatever. And this is going into the conspiracy again. If you were to implement that, the next thing you would see implemented is a social score. And this is what we're seeing happening.
That shit happens in China. Oh,
it's happening.
Man.
It's happening right now. It's so funny, man. If you ever watched the show Blacklist?
Black Mirror.
Black Mirror. There's an episode of Black Mirror with Ron Howard's daughter. I forget her name. Bryce Howard. Bryce Howard, and the episode's about they have social scores. It's in their system. It's because they're trackable, of course. By how they interact with people in society, judges their score. If they have a good social score, they get discounts on such things. They get access to such things and that kind of thing. And we're seeing that happen in China. They're doing it right now. So the theory of the process is they get things in digital and currency. They get these scores digital for your social status. So if you do something wrong in your social status, you will not have access to your digital currency.
That's so weird because if you think about it, like who determines that? It makes me think of all those science fiction movies where you had to act a certain way to be like it just reminds me of all the rich ass people back in the day where it was a situation where you had to act, you had to have a certain stature, you had to act a certain way, use a certain fork, say certain things. Like,
I mean, are we not seeing this in social media right now? Are we not seeing you have to support one side, you have to support one outlook on things, and it's primarily coming from the left. You have to believe certain things and believe and say only do certain things, or else we cancel you as a culture, right? They cancel you completely. Or they get you blocked, or they censor you. I mean, we're seeing this all across the board, and of course, some of that censorship is somewhat acceptable. And I don't believe in any censorship because I think that's breaking some of our constitutional rights.
I would agree,
but you're going to see more of this censorship happen. You know, and when we were seeing it happen, I mean, Twitter's been under investigation during multiple.
Yeah, I've seen the
hearings. Yeah,
I've listened to some of them.
It's shocking what they've been allowed to do. Granted, it being a private platform or whatever, they have such an economic and social impact on the world by what's being allowed on their platforms and who's allowed to have conversations, that they don't have the right to block anyone or suspend anyone or to censor anything that is against the common opinion.
So my issues with that is I think when it comes to social media, when you're able to influence people at a grand scale to a certain extent, then what happens is you're affecting elections, you're affecting a lot of city laws, state laws, you're affecting just a lot of things.
Yeah.
And the impact of social media, like the one thing that I 100% disagree with, okay?
Yeah.
If I said the most fucked up shit in 2012, 2013, whatever, but for example, let's just make it super heinous, right? Whatever it is, it's just extremely heinous. Like you would probably arrest me for saying this. I don't know. I'm making an example.
Yeah.
But come like 2020, I get a big job working for a company and they hire me and everything's fine. They don't do their due diligence, or they do and they don't go back far. They only go back like the last 7 years, but they don't go back the last 8. And so just like, criminal backgrounds, they only go back the last 7 years. Yeah. And so with that, I mean, it would just take the right blogger or whoever wanted to dig far enough, and they find this and they bring it up all of a sudden. And now randomly, just like, Disney, Marvel, whatever, they did to James Gunn, where he said some dumb shit years ago. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden it's like, that's what pisses me off. It's like, it's the company's job to do due diligence, but because of the PR issue, they're going to be like, all right, we're going to fire you. When in reality, they could just be like, listen, like, we can't do anything about what he did 8 years ago. We weren't working with him, not even 5 years ago. So how can we be held accountable? How can he be held accountable for something he said 8 years ago?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's probably not the same person anymore. Just as like in the example I gave, I wouldn't be the same person. I've learned so much, and I've learned, I would say I used to be a bigger asshole in regards to like how I would say things and not have any reverence for the other person.
Yeah.
And I've learned so much to not be as transparent or open, not because I'm worried about the result, but because I know that it's important for me to communicate a certain way. And there's a way that I can tell you that I didn't like something without being an asshole.
Yeah.
And so if I were to be held accountable for the things I've actually said, Holy shit. But the reality is, though, that just doesn't seem fair because there's a lot of people who say shit. And it seems as when you go on Twitter, and I don't know if you guys know Tim Pool. Do you know who Tim Pool is on YouTube?
Absolutely. Timcast.
So Tim Pool actually interviewed the Twitter CEO and I think another person in the another department. I don't know if it was legal or whatever. They did that on Joe Rogan's podcast. So if you're interested in that, definitely check it out. So, and he actually called them out and talked about these different things, but it seems as though they want to cherry pick. That's the appearance. I'm not saying that's what's happening because when the way that you listen to them expressing things, I feel as though they're humans trying to react to something that's like a problem of scalability. Like when you're at scale, the level of Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and YouTube, it's a scale issue. It's not like they can mirror everything in the Constitution and all that. I do feel personally that if they mirrored the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and all those kind of things in their platform, then unfortunately there would be like a lot more stuff you may not want to see. Yeah. However, the way that you kind of adjust that is you're building your own algorithm in a way to where you're only seeing the stuff that you are okay with. In regards to like, yeah, I don't want to see people get beheaded in other countries, so I'm going to mark that stuff. I don't want to see harmful content. And, AI can be used to sort of label things to be violent or whichever.
Yeah.
But this whole idea of I don't agree with something in regards to like a different opinion, and so we're going to deplatform that person entirely rather than providing resources. Yeah. So they're not blocking Donald Trump. They put labels under the things that claims that he makes and says this is not false or this is false or this is not true or whatever the case. And they link to another thing. And so, but the problem I've had with that is like it just seems like they link to something and it's like, yeah, it's like voting fraud is very rare, blah blah blah. It's generic. Yeah. It's not like actual evidence, in my opinion. And it's not fighting for Donald Trump. That's not the point. I'm just saying I'm a person where I want to go look and understand the numbers of each state and understand what actually happens, like where's the cases at. But anytime, this is another thing people need to understand, there are a lot of, and this is where I think when it comes to voting and anything that's countrywide, anything countrywide, policing policies, voting policies, whatever, all needs to be the same in every state. Just like the Second Amendment should be the same in every state. You know what I mean? Like, because it makes no sense to have laws that are different in everything, even though we have constitutional rights. Yeah. Like, that should just be the same. And then, like, but there's a separation between, country and state or government and state or whatever. And I'm like, sure, but then what's the point of having the Constitution and the Bill of Rights if we're going to supersede that and say, sorry, you can't own a gun?
Yeah. Yeah. It makes no sense.
Yeah, but the point with the voter stuff is like there's computers. Computers can be hacked. Absolutely. So there's a lot of, and they go, that doesn't happen. I'm like, but I'm saying like based on the way that like I can go, even if you say, okay, we have all these voting systems and they're not connected to the internet. Okay, cool. But guess what? They have to store the results somewhere. Guess what? Also, unless they have a freaking camera in every angle, you could pay off somebody who's working in the voting booth or whatever. Most of the time they're volunteers if they're not like an actual federal building. Then I'm pretty sure it's not that hard just to pay somebody, hey, here's 10 grand. Do me a huge favor.
Yeah, I don't think this, regarding what's going on right now, I do not think the story is as clear cut as they're saying it is on the mainstream media. There's been multiple things that aren't on mainstream media that are showcasing some of the things going on with the election and how easy it is with those Dominion systems and who owns the Dominion systems and what's going on with the Dominion systems. Like you said, it's all possible. It's not, people need to get out of the realm of, no, there's no way.
Well, things happen.
Things happen.
That's the thing that bothers me is like all I'm seeing in the media, and this is what bothers me too, when we have politicians that people don't like. Yeah. And what they're going to do is shit on them enough to where the media is only full of shitting on that person. I'm not saying Trump has a great mouth. That dude is a fucking idiot sometimes when he talks.
Absolutely.
But I think the problem of filling the media with nothing but talking shit about somebody, like, I feel they're kind of giving him a platform in a way. But the other thing too is the point I was trying to make is that it's important that I'm losing my train of thought on this, but
I know you're going.
You kind of get where I'm getting at. Like, it's important for us to kind of keep media in a. I'm trying to say this right. So the media is the problem.
Impartial.
Really,
They need to be impartial.
they do,
and they're not.
When all they're doing is blatantly blowing up the news with this. Now everybody's hating Trump, and then all you're seeing is like, when I was listening to the election results. Now that I'm getting back to that train of thought,
Yeah.
all I saw was, all anybody ever said was, there's no evidence of A, B, or C, or D.
Yep.
But people that are not Trump supporters that actually look into this stuff and go, what's going on here? This seems like there's something missing. And all anybody just keeps saying is there's no evidence, there's no evidence, there's no evidence. I'm like, okay, then what's going on with people tossing out ballots? Why are you finding that in a creek? Why are you what's going on with that? How is that not evidence?
Why
it just seems like it seems like they're changing the goalpost, or it seems like they're changing what facts are, and like that's the problem with so much news, is you can just flood people with so much shit and overwhelm them. They don't know what to believe,
and it's
like you see one article with showing that there's a bunch of ballots that were tossed out, and because they had Trump on them or whatever is what people are saying. And one article that I read, and of course that's just one side of the story because somebody had wrote it, and you got to figure out where they get their information from. But that's kind of where my confusion is like, I'm just a voter trying to find the best place I can find facts.
Yeah,
I don't know where to go.
Yeah, no, you're completely right, man, and it's overwhelmingly and shocking how much the media has done to, what they've done to Trump. And like, I'm not a Trump supporter. Like I said, I'm a libertarian. I'd probably vote for Tulsi Gabbard or somewhere else like that if I had the opportunity.
Yeah.
I believe if you as an individual citizen in this country can't see how divisive and how driven the media has been to make that man something I don't think he 100% is, then you are choosing to be blind. You're going along with the sheep, right? It's clearly evident how hard the media has been during the last 4 years of what agenda they want to set for him, how they want to label him, how they will use that against him. I mean, it all came to light at the end of this year of the way they use different social impact and injustices against him, even though maybe he had nothing to do with some of those things. And this always goes along towards everyone calling Trump a racist, a white supremacist, and all this kind of stuff, which he never was called prior to these last 4 years. Never was called that once in his life. But once he became president, it's all out war on that man because he wasn't a politician. He was an outsider. He won.
Right.
He won out of nowhere.
Those are the facts, though, that people need to understand. Is like, again, separate the fact. Now, him and I are both like not saying we're huge Trump supporters. It's just
I'm just not a Trump hater. I'm not a derangement syndrome person.
Sure, and then there's also the fact that like you can't judge somebody. I can't remember who told me the first time. Many people have mentioned this, but don't vote or don't pay attention to politicians by what they say. Pay attention to their voting record. Pay attention to what what they vote for. To pay attention to for example, if it's a president, pay attention to what they write into actual law or executive actions, for example.
Yeah.
And so pay attention to those things, not necessarily what's said, because what's said could be completely contextually shit on.
And not what's said by them, but what's said about them by the media.
Right,
I think that's
or
even
what
more
they say
important.
it's contextually taken out of just taken out of context.
So like we both said, we're not Trump lovers or anything like that. We probably both didn't even vote for him, but we both have our own opinions about what's true, what's not true. And those questions I always ask people I meet, who they voted for, or who they believe in, what they believe in. The first instance most people say is, he's a supremacist, he's a white supremacist. He said there's good people on both sides. And I say, all right, That clip, for instance. Go watch that whole clip. I know you've seen that on the news 1,000 times. Go watch that whole clip. That's not what was said. And I don't want to get into politics.
That's fine. No, but we're talking about media. We're talking about media and how they did the same shit to Alex Jones.
Yep. This is truth in media. Trump said they're both people are good people on both sides, and directly followed up with a sentence that said, "Of course, I'm not talking about the white supremacists or the white nationalists." That was directly followed after that quote. But the media only played that first part and has played that nonstop for 4 years. And that's what a lot of people base their evidence off of, that man's a white supremacist. It's because of that clip. And that's what CNN, that's what I think Biden even used during the races, during the campaigns. It's like, and Biden has no room to talk. They both are horrible choices. Let's be honest. Both horrible choices.
Well, the thing that bothers me when people talk about how great Biden is, I'm not gonna lie, dude knows how to talk, but
he's a politician.
He has said some racist stuff.
Yeah, done some racist things.
Yeah, and he sniffs a lot of young people. That's really weird.
Yeah.
Let me just put that out there. Every single time he's in a group photo for something, he's kind of grabbing waists and pulling people close and sniffing hair. You can clearly see that. There's no lie. It's hilarious how that's not in the news as much as it should be, or people are talking about. That's where I feel like the biased nature of the news is garbage in the sense that anybody else were to do that, they would tear him a new asshole.
And it's because there's a clear agenda to get Trump out of office, of course, by the media, because of course they don't want him to be in office because he says you're fake. No one wants you. The man is brash. The man has said some stupid things, but the one thing the man gets right is he calls people out on their crap.
That's true.
Which I appreciate for. I appreciate someone who does that. I wish he did it with some dignity and grace. I think if he went to a speech therapist and he went to a debate trainer to learn how to properly speak, and I think he did do that for that second round of debates. That's why he kept his cool a lot cooler.
If
he learned how to talk to the people better, I think he wouldn't have as much hate from the actual people as he has. But the media would still, of course, make him out to be horrible.
Definitely.
But I'll be honest. Last year I was one of those people. I didn't really care about politics as much. It just never on my agenda because I'm like, whatever. Everyone's controlled by something else anyways. They're all puppets. But this year I saw the divisiveness happening between the two candidates, and I saw how all of the actual good candidates didn't get to go running. The Democrats chose Biden, and we still had Trump running. So it's like, okay, we got no good choices now. Yeah, there were some decent candidates this year, especially on the Democratic side, who would have, I think, actually done some good for the world. But because they're not so mainstream, recycled politician garbage that we have over and over and over, we only got the old options again. Why do we have the same old white man options again?
Really annoying.
It's crazy to me.
It is really annoying.
Let's go back to term limits and age caps. We need all that kind of stuff in America.
Dude, it's garbage. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Politicians over general, but yeah.
But let's get out of politics because that will infuriate multiple people because they'll assume that we're Trump supporters, but we're not. We're truth seekers, and there's truth in saying the media is divisive and has agendas to get Americans to do their bidding, and that's been proven with Operation Mockingbird, which I'm going to do a whole podcast on. So if you want to link people later on to What If Wastelands, the podcast that's coming out.
Oh, for sure.
We're going to deep dive into Operation Mockingbird and prove how the media has been used since the 70s and prior to make things happen. And this is all related to. There was a great interview going around at the beginning of the pandemic that has resurfaced lately of a former KGB officer talking in the late 70s about how socialism, communism, and the media can influence the future of America. And the things that he says in that interview 50 years ago are spot on to what's happening into America today in terms of how the media is using certain aspects against us. And he's a KGB agent, so he knows.
Well, I think I know what you're talking about too, because he was like, we don't need
There's
we
no
don't
missiles.
need to
Yeah.
do, because the people perceive intelligence agencies as like 80% all that Mission Impossible shit, and then 15% all that. No, he was like, no, it's 80%. We're literally planning or doing whatever. Like, it's nothing
Long
like
game.
that. And then like 10, 15% is like that other stuff. But he was like, nah, like we're at a point now where we don't even need to do anything.
Yep.
We're not active. He was like, we don't need to do anything to America. They're doing it to themselves.
Yep. And it's so evident, and it's frightening.
And it's where you destabilize the population and divide them over decades.
Yep, and no one can doubt that has not happened significantly, and especially this year. So it's fascinating that people can't see that divisiveness being played out by the outlets. Some people just want to believe what they want to believe, and that's fine. But it's very hard. I mean, I've had a lot of family issues this year because I'll try to drop a little knowledge or a little bit extra free thinking on their end, and I become a conspiracy theorist, or I become somebody who thinks differently outside the norm. Even though I'm like, it's not conspiracy, it says it right here. It's they're talking about it. Why are you not concerned about it? And it's definitely divided elements in my family. I wish it didn't, but I can't be one of those guys that just sits by and lets the world happen to me. I'd love to be that guy who didn't care about the things, but it's important, I think, to help people realize that not everything they're hearing on the news is real. Not everything they're seeing happen is real. I mean, there's been multiple, especially this year. It's kind of crazy how many instances we've seen of lies and deception. I mean, do you remember at the beginning of the pandemic? There was mass hysteria. I think it was ABC News. I'm not sure on this. Don't quote me. It was one of the major news outlets who posted a video saying the hospitals in New York are full. They're at capacity. Look at this.
And then and then there would be people that go up there and be like, "Why aren't you guys full? What's going on?"
No, not even just that. The video clip they shared was a recolored, re-edited video of the Italy clip being shown 2 months prior. And they apologized and they redacted it and they did all this. But that was done. It was done. It was used. And we've seen multiple ones. And then you brought up the other instances of where people would go and film their hospitals and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, because there's people that would go up there and actually ask straight up, like, are your hospitals full? And they'd be like, no. And so I think the media coverage as well is a problem because they will put things in people's minds that are not fact. And I can speak on a lot of that because I was actually doing a lot of IT support for the VA, doing IT support for them at the time. But I'm going to get into that here in just a moment. I'm going to take another one of these bathroom breaks here. We'll put the time at 2:47 because I'm drinking that beer and it's getting right through me. So
that's fine. Can we actually take I have a little something I have to do for about half an hour.
Yeah?
Yeah. Can we come back at 5:30? Oh, sorry, that your time. What time is that?
Let's see. So that would be 7:30.
Is that okay with you?
Do you want to come back? Because my wife's wanted to eat, so we can probably do that.
You want to come back later? Even later than that, so you can eat?
I think that would be enough time, actually.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you cool with coming back?
Yeah, I'm cool with that. Are you cool with that?
I'm cool with that.
Yeah,
the tough part is
I have to do something before 6 here, and it's 5 o'clock. I just realized that.
The tough thing. Well, okay, yeah. The tough thing here is like I don't have a pause button like I did with Ecamm.
Right, yeah.
That was the benefit. There was I had a pause button, but with this one, I just mark down the time.
Yeah, if you're cool with it, I don't want to force you to do anything.
No. I'm cool with it. Wife just wants to eat. We can do whatever. The only thing I have to do tonight is I'm working from home for the next 2 weeks because of COVID. They wanted to do some sort of like quarantine thing for 2 weeks for people visiting family. And so I got to set up my shit for tomorrow so I know it works. But yeah, so what we'll do is we'll stay recorded. Is that okay with you?
You want to keep recording?
Well, I can't. If I stop the broadcast, it ends
worries.
it. So, all right. Okay, cool.
That's fine.
So we'll keep it going, and then we'll come back.
Cool. All right.
Sweet, man. I'll see you back in like 30.
Yeah, sounds good. Bye.
We were talking about
like
the Great Reset, COVID, digital currency, and you were talking about build back better.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
Oh, I'm right back here during the little part.
Off.
I'm just kind of sitting forward.
Oh, that's cool. So yeah, we can come back and start diving into Tesla, Hollow Earth, and wrap it up on that.
Let's do it. I don't remember the last thing we said about the Great Reset, but I'll just say look into it for your own, do your own research, that kind of thing. Not good? All right. You let me
Pretty
know
much,
when.
yeah. All right, so let me make sure I have this jotted down right. We
Yeah.
said come back at 38. So
Perfect.
I'll just say 38 then, and we'll just dive in. All right, and leave some silence here. All right, we're back from that piss break, if you will.
Oh yeah.
When you drink a beer, sometimes it goes through you. So to wrap up the Great Reset, if you will, I mean, like like he was saying, you can definitely look this stuff up. I mean, it's
Nonsense.
not like we're trying to spout any type of
Yeah.
false information necessarily. There's obviously a lot of things you can have ideas or theories about, but a lot of governments see this opportunity as a way to change things that would be a lot harder to adjust in the mainstream everyday situation because things are moving. But in COVID, it just seems like it might be a better opportunity to make adjustments, which to an extent, for being the devil's advocate, or if we're just thinking like not emotionally and we're thinking more logically, the
Yeah.
reality is that is kind of true.
And so, and more the conspiracy of anything is they were saying that the Great Reset was perfectly planned to go along with the pandemic. So that's like the grand conspiracy of it, right? And that's the part that you'll see BBC. I'm looking at a couple articles right now. I looked up a couple things while we're on the break. BBC, The Hill, all those kind of things. Were spouting articles about debunking the conspiracy that the coronavirus is planned to do the Great Reset, right? That's really the debunk part. But the things that are scarier is not that. Things that are scary is what could happen with the potential of the Great Reset and what it could do. And it's not just about currency and digital ID. It's also about rapid change for things of the future as far as like how we use energy sources and oils and that kind of stuff. It has to do. They're trying to change the switch to climate change to being the main focus factor for the Great Reset, and trying to radically switch a lot of that stuff over. If you want to read more about what they want to do, read the Green New Deal. That's exactly what it's referencing when they talk about the Great Reset. So, yeah, go into it and see if that affects your life, your livelihood, your individualism, as we talked about, and why you should vote for that. And yeah.
Isn't that what the Paris
No, there's a
Accords
little
are?
bit different. There's some things related on the Paris Accord.
I was trying to understand why Trump would have pulled us out of that. He said it wasn't a good
Yeah,
deal. Is what it sums up to be. Wasn't a good deal for
of
America,
course. Yeah,
supposedly. I'm paraphrasing, of course. But there's also things about how, like, it would just allow other countries to run rampant with whatever they want. Like, apparently, like, and I don't know facts,
yeah,
so I'm just spewing off of what I've heard. That China was like can have like coal plants and everything. They could do what they want. It just seemed like it was going to put everybody else
yeah. And
in a
where the
tough
Great
spot.
Reset is trying to change everybody. And you'll definitely be able to change probably Canada
Yeah,
and parts of
and
Britain and the America. There's no way you're going to get places like China and those places on board. You know?
the thing that's crazy though is I think again going back to the logical point. Like if I were to think about it, or if I was in charge of something like that, I would think of it like we need to get some hidden technologies because when you watch Cosmic Disclosure, when you watch uh, Corey Good, David Wilcock, those guys, and then you talk to people they talk to, which they call whistleblowers. These are people that like not Corey Good, not David Wilcock, but the people they're bringing on board that have actual credentials. It's like at the end of the day, everybody who knows someone who's worked on top secret projects, you just know
Oh
there's
yeah, or ones that
technology
we
out there
purposely
that
have
we're not
hidden
aware of.
that's
So
right into Tesla.
right, and so like
Yeah,
there's talks of exactly.
yeah,
Well, I mean, Tesla had so much, dude. They were doing. If you watch, History Channel has a series on YouTube called the
yeah,
Tesla Files, and you can watch it on YouTube. I have a playlist of it, but essentially they go through and
yeah.
they find. They even go to where he's from.
Wait. Where
They
he's
go all the
from
way
in
over
the
there. All
world,
the
or where he's
way,
voted from? Where they,
originally
the
from
conspiracy though, right?
where he was born.
It's said
No,
that Tesla was a Venetian. He's from Venus. You never heard that? Yeah, he's
Oh,
from
from
Venus.
Venus?
Yeah,
What? I mean, it wouldn't surprise me. Dude's
yeah,
smart
he
as
was very
fuck.
different. He's very different. Yeah,
Yeah, way against the grind.
yeah,
He didn't want to do the same. He wanted to do things that the capitalists at the time, like Chase, for example,
yeah,
didn't want to have any part of. They couldn't meter it. They couldn't make money off of it. They didn't want to do it.
yeah. And that's funny because that whole Tesla storyline of Chase and everything ties in with a lot of the elitist conspiracies with Chase and J.P. Morgan and the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, all them,
Yeah.
and the Titanic conspiracy theories and how
Oh,
everything that happened.
there was some people. I remember hearing about. There were some
Yeah,
people on the Titanic that had some dope ass ideas.
yeah. Well,
And
and there was five families that were in the discussion of main parts of America in the early 1800s, 1900s, and three of them were aboard the Titanic that night, and they died.
what
Right.
was that about though? Like, what were they doing?
Well, there was the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the J.P. Morgan Chase. I can't remember the other two names of the other guys. I always blank. But there's five of them stating different futures of the world, and mainly it has to do with the Federal Reserve. Three of those,
that act happened in 1913, though.
yeah.
They did that planning on a secret island. They pushed it through a senator that was in on it.
But
That's
three of them didn't want to do it. That's what my understanding of the theory.
Three out of five families
Did not want to do it.
That's why they died on the Titanic. Holy shit!
Yeah. That's one of the conspiracies. I go down that rabbit hole. It's like going down the 9/11 rabbit hole. But
what doesn't make sense though is like, I'm so. Here's one thing I would love. I would love if there were benevolent alien races that knew how to. I look at the universe overall, including multiple universes, multiple realities, as a book, and we're a page in that book. And there's alien races that have figured out how to vibrate their frequency or their craft or whichever to a different frequency in a different universe with different circumstances. Mm-hmm. And I would be super curious to go to the universe where the Earth went into those different directions where certain things didn't happen. I mean, it would be super curious to see, because if Tesla was allowed to do what he was good at, and then that stuff was like praised, and like he was able to continue to push through and train people, and people were given the time to just study an advanced human race, dude, where would we be right now?
Didn't the CIA? This is all related to what you're talking about.
CIA has a lot of that kind of shit, dude. I got to dive into all that, man. It's a lot to read, but
they just released a document. I remember going into psychotronics, paranormal abilities, and parallel dimensions. Yes, but the CIA just unclassified documents proving that we live in parallel universes, that we live in there's multiple realities.
How did they prove it?
I don't know. I haven't gone that deep into it. I just remember I saw the.
It was just a question, but that's like I would love to understand.
Oh yeah, me too. I've only seen this recently. I've not gone a deep dive into it.
Yes, there's so much shit going on behind the scenes that as this stuff has been around for decades, they're finally unclassifying it.
Yeah,
and it's shit that's been known for decades, but they're finally declassifying it. But because the media is not set up in a way that allows for us to go nuts over stuff that's real and dig more into it.
Yeah.
Because my thought process of the Great Reset, if I could see it in a good light, right, is that we switch everything to the point to where we know automation is going to be a thing. So we're setting up UBI. We're setting up like, what would if we could see humanity, the human race, in a different perspective, and I've been saying this for a while, where we don't have to worry about the base necessities, food, water, electricity, housing. And if you wanted to study and learn things and go down specific specialized paths like doctors, lawyers, whatever the case may be, or engineering, like you could go down those paths, or you could just live your life simply, right? You could go and be a politician, or serve in the military or whatever the case, because technology down the road is going to make us to the point to where simple ailments are going to be ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like that's how I see it. I see the true reality that we should be in is one that everybody does without. Sorry, I said that wrong. Everybody is not without, is what I meant to say.
Okay, so this is all related to what we're talking about. You need to share my screen right now.
I just did.
All right, so this is
Can you zoom in? It's
a research article done by this is on CIA.gov, by the way.
Can you zoom in?
Let's see here.
If it's a PDF document, you should be able to hit the plus button or something.
Yep, I found it. All right, so this is dated June 9th, 1983 at CIA.gov. This article goes over, it says approved for release on 2003. So obviously 20 years later, that's how they do these kind of things for these drops. This goes into all of the mechanics that they talk about, everything that has to do with the CIA investigating parallel universes and how we lived in projected realities. The whole entire thing goes into all that.
Oh my God.
This is on CIA.gov. So I'm not making this stuff up. This was dropped actually apparently in 2003, but I think it just made its way to the internet. That's why I've seen people talk about it.
There was like unclassified, because they got a lot of documents that are actually unclassified, but they have to scan. They have to scan them in.
Yeah, and redact and that kind of stuff. But this all goes into projected realities and parallel dimensions.
So nuts.
And I can keep scrolling for days. Fascinating. This is done in 1983. So imagine the research they've done from this point on.
That's so nuts.
Yeah. You can talk about black holes, holograms. Like, what? CIA.gov, it's official site.
I want to learn about holograms. That's actually something that's super fascinating. I would like to understand the real technology that works.
Yeah.
I would be pretty excited to learn about that. But yeah, I'm definitely gonna. I like the way they have this laid out with StreamYard. I have to experiment whether I like this view, whether I like this view more or this view. I don't know. I know this view is more link for that app, by the way. Sorry, this link's more. This view is more personable. It's more closer, but I don't know. This one allows for there to be like a background,
and there's advantages when you use your hands and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Pretty much, and it's you get the wider perspective as well. So, but yeah, just in case anybody didn't know how to spell Bennett's name, me.
Feel free to call me Ben too. And it's so funny. This podcast, we did a podcast about a month or so ago, and it had some issues on the post processing issues. It's so funny. This podcast is completely different, but it's fine. It's good.
It's
so fun. Fun conversations.
Skype, yeah. So to clarify that, Skype. I started out recording Skype conversations. It was good for the most part. I literally started changing my tools after the first couple episodes, and I found that that there would be a lot of audio cut out. It would show video just fine, but there'd be a lot of audio cut out.
Yeah.
Like I had to redo another podcast because it was just chunks of audio just gone.
That's a problem.
Yep, it is, which is why StreamYard's great for now, and later on I'll find an even better system or tool to record. The reality is, obviously, down the road, it'd be good to have a studio and have people come, but I got to be making money to doing that.
Does Joe Rogan fly those people out?
That's a good question. I don't know, but
how did you get them all to come out to Texas?
Look at it this way. First off, a lot of the people he has on his podcast are promoting something, so they would pay their own way. That makes a lot of sense, right?
I think so.
And then he has. Well, no, I mean, that makes a lot of sense from a business perspective because his whole podcast is based on talking to people he's interested in. Mm-hmm. So he'll have conversations with people who wrote books or, because he has agents. By the way, that's how he works. Like when he talks about how does he get people on the podcast, he has a manager that he's worked with for a long time and people have to go through him, but also, he filters a lot of shit. And then also, it's his show. So he'll be able to, supersede that business manager, or I believe it's an agent or a business manager, whichever. But he can supersede that if he's like, I want to have this person on the podcast. They just schedule it. And then a lot of the people that are trying to advertise their book or whichever the case, whatever their thing is, mainly it's books. I haven't seen him have anybody on for general digital course products. It's usually just books. Shit he finds interesting. Either people of academia or just people that are studying something really interesting and have a book. Like I'm super excited about this idea that I have to write a book that's called Power of Choice.
Mm-hmm.
And it has a lot to do with a lot of the struggles I had growing up. Not just about who I am as a person and what I was born with,
Yeah.
but a lot of the struggles that I had growing up in regards to, the father thing, struggling with him, somebody who struggled with addiction and with drugs and alcohol, and then having to navigate that and how do you learn how to be a man? And there's a lot of things that not just me, but anybody. I mean, we talked about last podcast, some things that you struggled with but we're not the only ones that have those situations. And so I think this book would be very powerful for men to read and understand that there's a power of choice, which means your circumstances, your situation, obviously, if you're of age, you're 18 or over, you have the ability to choose a better situation. It doesn't mean it's going to be all roses and butterflies. But there's always a choice. Like you can choose to move away, or you can choose to get a different job, or you can choose to, not spend your money and save up for a car, or whatever the situations are that, you find yourself in a bad spot where you're mentally stuck. Now, when I say, when you have power of choice, it just means that it's usually, from what I've experienced and what I've seen, it's just people getting a mental block. There's mental blocks. There's emotional blocks that stop people from doing what other people feel are super easy choices, but are really hard for other people.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's a good book, man. I'm excited to read it.
Yeah, I haven't even started it, but as I continue talking about it, I really get to the point where, like, it's more of like I don't have a choice. I have to write it because it's super important.
Yeah.
Based on the fact that it would help a lot of people. Like I stopped physically fighting and yelling and screaming with my family because I found that I had the power of choice and chose to not allow it to get to that point. And I stopped.
Which is hard. I come from a place of that as well. I think it's a passion thing. Along with it's choice why you do it, but the reasons why you do it is a mixture of passion. Like I don't have any ill will towards anybody or family or anything like that, but I'm very passionate about what I believe in. I'm very passionate about what I think or what I do. Right. So that it comes across in everything, right? I'd be like, no, that's not how you make spaghetti. You have to make spaghetti this way. It's just because that's how our thought process is passionate about things we are passionate about.
Right.
So yeah, to understand that you have a choice to react that way, right? It's controlling your reactions. How to control or just react.
Which
the choice.
You and I are both married, so you can speak to some of this as well. Is as a man in a marriage, the definition of masculinity, or what does it mean to be a man, is not generally or accurately defined in a set thing because we're not hunter and gatherers anymore. We're not having to defend our home and our land like we used to. I'm only using that to express where a lot of the aggression and a lot of the manly buffness in terms machoism. Machoism is the term I'm looking for. And that's not necessary. And it's actually probably more beneficial that you probably make smarter choices in regards to, because if you get yourself in a situation where there's a physical altercation, there's more than just consequences for the other person in terms of getting physically harmed. There's consequences for you because you could be put in jail.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, then there's other repercussions from possibly losing your job, but now you got an assault charge and how finding jobs later on is difficult. And so there's a lot of things that, again, going back to the book, The Power of Choice can help. And when you learn how to handle situations. So when I get back to the whole being married thing, is communication is huge. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
I don't mean to relate,
and not just marriages. That's any relationship, right?
For sure. I just want to be clear. I'm not trying to relate punching somebody to being married. Like, I'm
talking
about putting hands on
factor.
spouses. No, just the aggression point of men. Because you have that we're yelling and screaming, and we get angry, and like you said, passionate is actually a big part of that. Yeah. But most of it is communication, building relationships, and understanding that, in a marriage, you have to get to know that person. Your preconceived notions can fuck you sometimes too, because you'll have a preconceived notion of what a man should be or should do.
Expectations ruin everything.
And it screws you because, you have to be very dynamic. That's where a lot of people screw up, and they treat marriages like boyfriend-girlfriend relationships.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. If you're going to be like married, then you got to put the work in. Go to counseling if you got to go to counseling. Which, that's another thing. Go to counseling before shit gets wrong. Like, go to counseling before stuff becomes a problem. That's another thing that's like, people look at counseling as though that's only for people who have issues. That's not true.
Yeah, not at all. Absolutely. I don't know where we're going from that.
No, I mean, it's just when I was saying that you might understand some of this is really just like the struggles in communication, like from a man's perspective, right? Like how.
I mean, we're taught as men to just suck it up and to not talk about our feelings, not talk about what's bothering us, right? And I think a lot of people fall into that. I mean, we were talking about a story earlier where you had that same kind of problem where someone wasn't upfront with you, and it led to a bigger issue in the end. And I had the same thing happen to me recently with a potential business partner I was going to work with. It's just people need to learn to don't hold things in. Don't just think you have to be the macho man, not to talk. Have these conversations when things are happening. It will way de-escalate the situation from a later standing point if you were to bring it up later.
Yeah. Yeah, which is why I struggle with, like, and I'm learning this, which, by the way, for those that notice when you're listening to podcasts, I don't intentionally mean to speak so much to the point to where I'm not allowing the other person to talk. It's just I enjoy talking so much, and this is the platform for that.
Yeah.
But as I learn to communicate better, I'm learning that you don't have to say things for ego. You don't have to say things because you want to be seen as somebody who knows stuff. It's okay to say, I don't know nothing about that, or I don't have a whole bunch of information on that, or just be clear about, like, here's my opinion or my perspective on that, but kind of know when to cut it off. And so I've learned recently that you can speak minimal in a way that allows it to be open-ended.
Yeah.
And opens it up for dialogue so that you can ask a question for clarification if I didn't give enough information.
Yeah.
And that's something where, like, oh, okay. And so, like I said earlier, like the person that kind of wasn't that way, you kind of don't allow people to grow. Well, then the problem is like we're supposed to just bring people on board to a team or something like that and expect that they're going to be the way that we think they should be professionally. But the reality is everybody's coming from different backgrounds. They're not going to all know everything that you know, everything this other person knows. Like, people are coming from all different backgrounds.
Mm-hmm.